Linux Action Show is created by Jupiter Broadcasting. It's sponsored by Ting. Go to last.ting.com to save off your first device or plan. And DigitalOcean. Go to digitalocean.com and use the promo code Here's the Thing, all one word like you're slurring it, and spin up your own Linux rig for free. And Linux Academy. Go to linuxacademy.com/unplugged and invest in your mind while saving some money. Welcome to Linux Action Show episode 417. My name is Chris.
My name is Noah.
Hey, Noah. Good morning. Guess what? Big show.
Big show.
Big show today. Not just necessarily in length. I have no idea how long the show's going to be, but big in terms of importance to me personally, to both of us. You know, if I was really like one of those people who planned ahead, Noah, I probably would say we should have saved this show for our 10th anniversary. That's how important it is to me. They said it could never be done. They said Linux was too far behind. They said Apple owned the market and it was impossible. But today we prove them wrong. Linux shows up for the job and gets it done. We'll tell you how we are doing our live broadcasting, streaming to multiple destinations, recording all of it, even doing live events under Linux. And we're going to go in depth in a way we never have before because we've just recently built new Linux rigs to do this, set up Linux servers to accomplish this, and using all free and open source software, as far as I know. For the most part, I guess. We'll get into that in the details.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
I'm making sure. I'm going to double check. But yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I can't think. I don't know about, well, we'll talk about it in the segment. But it's super exciting for us to see Linux at this point. And in our pick segment coming up, there's another application that I never thought would be this far along for production under Linux. And even if you have no interest in the multimedia side of it or the broadcasting side of it, the sheer monumental achievement that I think it is for Linux is worth it if you're just a Linux fan to stick around and listen to this week's episode because it's really freaking exciting. In the news segment, we have some really interesting things to dig into this week. I feel like the news segment could be its own show. ZFS for Linux has truly arrived. We'll tell you by which marker we are now making that proclamation. Fedora is implementing H.264 support, but it looks like total crap, and I can't understand why they're doing it all. And in fact, I think it's going to lead to a worse user experience. So we'll tell you about how they're blowing that in the news segment. And then United RPMs is coming along. Because let's face it, if you want to run modern Fedora, Fusion RPMs isn't really working for you. So they have a solution, but there is a major newbie rookie mistake they're making. We'll tell you about that. Intel is preparing a major restructuring after the whole blowing it with Skylake drivers. We'll tell you about the fixes they plan to make. And then prepare your wallet because there's a great game for Linux. It's not like a shoot 'em up game. It's like a totally chill out and enjoy space. Although, it might not be for everybody, but I'll tell you about it coming up. And then we've got the feedback segment where I think, Noah, is this the episode where we're going to talk about entitlement a bit in the open source community?
Yes.
So there's an interesting email that came into the show that brought up this subject, and there's been some recent blog posts, so we're going to talk about that in the feedback segment, as well as a few other things. But before all of that, Noah, do you know what we got?
The picks! I thought you were going to ask.
I know, right? I know. It's because it's such a big show. There's a lot to get to. Yeah, it's the picks. And this is interesting. It's very multimedia. The Light, what is it? I'm make sure I get this right. The Lightman Group? Yeah, Lightman Group freaking runs Linux.
Have you really not seen Lie to Me?
You know what? I haven't, but I YouTubed this group. I YouTubed the songs and stuff just before we started, and I totally do recognize it. But yeah, before I did this, nah.
Okay, so this is, you can add this to the list of things that Chris really needs to see that he hasn't seen.
You know, here's the thing.
This was on that list.
I am making a concerted effort to switch over to content that is distributed by the makers freely.
Okay. Never mind. This is not one of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
I'm not trying to be holier than thou. Like, I'll still watch commercial stuff, but basically, if they want to make it hard for me to watch it freely and easily, I'd rather watch the content creators that are making stuff that they don't mind if I download it or they don't mind if I stream it. Like, I'd rather watch that. So
you know what? After my experience this week, I'm right on.
Yeah,
good on you.
That's just where I put the but that doesn't mean if it's a good show. Like, I'm watching Silicon Valley right now. I'm liking that. Yeah. So if it's a good show, I'll watch it. So Lightman Group is what? Tell me. So there's a show called Lie to Me, and basically it's based loosely on the true story of the guy who came up with microexpressions or discovered microexpressions. Basically, the idea that there are certain things that the human body does that you can't hide when you're lying, and so he forms a consultant group that can basically interview people and tell them if they're lying. So corporations hire him, or it works a lot with law enforcement, that kind of thing. And one of the things, obviously, they use a lot of software to work
work on their cases. And Ham Radio actually caught this and sent this in.
I'm glad you guys got it still, because I would play the actual clip, but YouTube has already pulled it down. Let's see. He uploaded
it. He just uploaded it this morning, too.
Yeah, he uploaded it this morning, and they've already pulled the clip off. I love those Python scripts, dude. So, yeah, we do have a still of it for proof. He's sitting there in front of a Linux box, chillaxing while he works. I love it. That's a pretty high-profile runs Linux, Noah. That sounds like a cool show too, actually.
It is a really cool show. Although I don't know if it's cool enough to suggest that you compromise on your effort to cut down on.
It's not like I said. It's not a hard rule. It's just like it's one of the many like metrics I follow to make a decision before I watch something. That's basically it. So yeah, that is really cool to see Linux there. You know, also just sort of a tangential runs Linux that the subreddit submitted today. I wonder if I could find out who it was, because they just submitted it this morning. It was here it was, by Paperclip, which is a great name. That who the Mr. Robot show? I don't know if you've seen Mr. Robot.
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay,
multiple times.
Good. They have a new quote unquote viral marketing site, which basically makes Linux users look like hackers. So you see grubs loading. Look, that's like the whole boot sequence of Linux, and then you're into a command line here where there's typing going on. There's hacking happening. And it's whoismrrobot.com, and it runs in your browser. And you know what's nice about it? Not Flash. It's not Flash. It's pretty neat. Awesome. Watch it again, Noah. Watch it as it see grub right there, and then it loads the Linux kernel. It does the whole boot sequence. I love it. So yeah, a couple of neat sites. Mr. Robot's another one of those where I would break that rule to watch that show. So pretty cool. Check it out. We'll have links to the imagery in the show notes, and you can find the other one is Who is Mr. Robot, I think it was. We'll have a link in the subreddit. Okay, so let's take a moment and talk about DigitalOcean, sponsor right here on the Linux Action Show, and really a key part of our production process now. It's really something. Once you have Linux infrastructure on demand that is super quick to spin up and low cost with great performance and an easy interface, it over time just becomes more and more of a game changer. Just as an example, we had a couple of we had two droplets that were doing some streaming work for us, and we decided it would be better to change up how we do them. Because it's $5 a month to run these droplets, we are able to spin up a third droplet, transfer all the settings we need, configure the new one, get everything working, have all three droplets running concurrently, because the cost is near nothing in terms of what we're doing here for the kind of scale of work we're doing. Get the third one perfectly configured, spin down that second one, and might make a easy, smooth migration. In fact, it works so well that if you're watching this show live right now, that's just what happened last night, and you don't even know it. It's such a great way to work, and the interface makes it so easy and so possible. And what's even better about DigitalOcean is once you become a more advanced user, you can start to take advantage of things like their API, which are wicked cool, which we now are able to manipulate any of the properties of my droplets using bots that use the API. It's super nice. And if you use our promo code, here's the thing, all one word, lowercase, slurred. Here's the thing. You get a $10 credit. Now, $5 a month, you can spin up that $5 rig, run it for free for 2 months. They've got Ubuntu, they've got Debian, they've got CentOS, they've got CoreOS, they've got, of course, even free Bizzle. And I think you'll find that it's a pretty nice solution with great documentation. Really great guides, including like this new guide right here on how to set up OpenVPN on Ubuntu 16.04. Now, I kind of feel like, no, we should save how we're using these droplets for our production segment, even though it would make good ad content. We're legitimately not using it for any other reason than it's the best solution.
We can leave it at this. This won't give anything away in the actual segment. Is that it's all you have to know is that last night, in order to we're basically trying different things, right? And then it doesn't work, and then we're restarting over. So one way to do that is first we can just blow those servers away and restart them, right? That's beneficial enough. But the second thing that we can do that was even more useful was I just spun up like 5 of them. I just spun up like 5 droplets, and then I was trying a different thing simultaneously on all 5 in 5 different terminal windows. And then finally, when we got the one that worked, then I just blew the other ones away and ran that for a little bit, and then eventually migrated that into the main server.
That is a nice trick. That is a really nice trick. I can't wait to tell you guys how the cool stuff we're doing with the API to spin up systems on demand for us now and stuff like that. We'll tell you about that, though, in the actual stuff we're working on segment. But right now, I'll just say, for us, it is our go-to infrastructure. They've got data centers all over the world: New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, London, Germany, Toronto. So if you just want to be near Alan Jude, I understand. They've got that. You could run FreeBSD and get in tight. They make it super easy to add your SSH keys. They have an HTML5 console, so you can watch the thing from post all the way up to login, which is really nice when all of a sudden you can't ping the rig anymore and you want to know why you're not getting a response. Having that quick console access, even from like a tablet or phone, is unbelievably convenient, especially when you're in a pinch. Really great UI. Just check it out. DigitalOcean.com and use the promo code. Here's the thing. So that way we get a little credit. It keeps our show going. And it is a great frickin' resource, all running on top of Linux with SSDs for all of their storage. So it's just super nice. And Wes from Linux Unplugged is using LXD for containers. And of course, they work great with Docker and everything. DigitalOcean.com. Thanks, DigitalOcean. So really quite excited because it fits in with the whole theme of our show. KDN Live has, well, hi there. Hello. KDN Live has released a new version. It kind of like matches up in numbering. 1604 was released in April. And it is a hell of a release. No, not only does it just make one of the best video editors under Linux a little bit nicer, but the overall polish is really superb. And instead of just telling you about it, I just thought I'd show you because I got it installed right here. And here, I'll zoom in and enhance out one little thingy here. But I've loaded here in KDN Live, I've loaded a clip that we'll be playing later in the show that I was just adding a few tweaks to. So you can see this is it's a Qt application running under my GNOME desktop, and it works just fine. And one of the first things that jumped out at me is it's not holding my hand. For example, it's using the correct terminology like alpha manipulation and the different terminologies you actually use for in editing. So it's not like they're like iMovie equivalents. They're like the actual professional tool. And I really like the way here. I'll draw your attention. You're right. Notice right here on the beginning of the clip. No, I added a little fade. That's what that little triangle is here on the beginning. Yep. That fade has these little handles at the top that I can drag to change the fade length just right there, which I think is a really nice UI way to manage that. Also, this is not, some of the stuff isn't new, but if you know as a Lightworks editor, so I'm just showing some of the stuff that you can see they have the audio waveform right there in the main clip, which is nice. And if I wanted to go in here to audio, I could bring down an audio compressor, or I could add different stats right here. Again, the real terminology of the actual effects. So now I have a fade in, which I don't know if I've rendered yet, but I have a fade in. And you can see in the editor, I can play back in real time. I've applied an audio compressor
by the sound mixer over there. A dirty paper towel.
So that's the clip I'll be playing later, and I've been able to add in a crossfade for both. I shot this on a phone, brought it in, started editing. It has no problems working with this H.264 file at all. I could totally see this becoming my main editor for the kind of editing I do now. Yes.
Even over, what's the one that you were using?
Final Cut? No, for AvidMux, just for ins and outs, is like my daily editor. Just to mark in and outs of clips. This, though, like you want to bring it in, add a few transitions. You want to, tweak a few more things. If I'm just tweaking audio levels and I'm just converting from one format to another and I'm just marking it in and out, I use AvidMux, which is like 90% of my workload for Unfilter, for example, or like playing clips in these shows. But if I want to maybe shoot a couple of things on a camera phone or on a GoPro and maybe release a video for the patrons, that a lot of times is when I'd have to sit down and go to Final Cut to actually get that done. And it always drove me crazy because I'm doing all this work under Linux, and I take a step up and I just didn't find anything was up to snuff. This right here, though, I don't know what it would be like with like a 2-hour project. That's where these things tend to get a little hairy. But right now, I'm telling you what, this is my new editor. Straight up.
Really?
This is my video editor now. This has gotten... Here's the other thing that's nice about it. It hasn't crashed on me. Like this is a problem I used to have with a lot of the editors under Linux, quite literally, was they would crash on me constantly. This has not been a problem. This really feels like it's had good, consistent development. It's gotten to a point where there's a lot of stuff that I really like, and I've just started playing with it this weekend, and I love it. I love it a lot. So
what version is the one that just came out now?
1604. Sort of matches up with the Ubuntu release.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I had one other question. Do you know, this isn't a big deal, but is there a dark mode or a dark theme?
I would imagine that if I brought up my Qt theme settings and changed it to dark, then it would be dark.
Gotcha.
Or maybe if people know a way to do it under GTK, I'd love to not have to install whatever I'd have to install to do that. Probably I'd have to install a whole ton of the Plasma desktop. So.
You know, the truth is, like, yes, I edit under Lightworks, but I am not married to the solution. In fact, I rarely have anything super good to say about it. It's just it's a tool that I use that works. But I would love to move off of it onto something that is more open source, and that I'm not always, because I am tiptoeing around, kind of afraid that someday EditShare is just going to say, well, actually, really, we just don't care about Linux anymore.
Yeah, that is one thing I really respect is that they have continued to move development forward over time on a fairly reliable release schedule. I guess there is a dark mode in the settings. I don't see it, but I guess there is one in here. So I suppose if you just dug around in the actual settings itself, I'm looking at I like a lot. I can set how many cores I wanted to use. This is another thing that a lot of video editors are starting to get away from, is allowing you to specify these kinds of settings. So I like that they're giving me that option, that control back again. It has built-in support for capture cards and Blackmagic devices specifically. It has controls specifically for Blackmagic devices, which is kind of an interesting thing because I have some of those. So I might like to play with that as well. I'm really excited about the new Kdenlive Live. It came out, a few weeks ago, but we just really haven't had a chance to talk about it. So look at this. Bypass codec verification. Get metadata. Interesting. Have to play more with this. This just started this weekend, and I like it a lot. So that's the new Kdenlive Live, and that is our Spotlight, which surprisingly, our desktop app pick, which surprisingly has never been an app pick before. So it seemed like a good time.
We have a surprise desktop app pick this week. Did you know that?
Oh, hold on. I gotta have a surprise bell somewhere. Where's my? I don't. Hold on. There you go. What is it?
That worked well.
What's the surprise app pick?
Our surprise desktop app pick this week is StackP, and this, quite frankly, is an app pick that I'm going to use to troll you a little bit. It is a easy file receiving application, and there's a link in Telegram. But basically, what it does is you install it on a server, and basically I can drop. All I have to do, my understanding is, I just drag a file in, I drop it, and then you receive the file. So it's kind of like thinking.
So is it using WebRTC basically? You think? It must be, right? So it's how do you use it? Doesn't say. Interesting.
Looks like it's written in Python, maybe?
And they have a command line version too. Yeah, Python is at least the command line version's Python, that's for sure.
So basically, this is what I'm thinking might be a great way for me to get show segments to you.
You're such a jerk. You're such
Sync thing.
Sync thing, you bastard. Sync thing. It's all it takes. Or you know what? Didn't I give you one of the Dropbox accounts? Didn't I?
I think maybe.
Those things are gold, man. Those things are gold. Yeah, you should use that. Okay.
Maybe
just because we pay a lot for that. I tell you what, though, Sync thing is great unless you reload your boxes constantly. And then once you or your machine has dead hard drives, like that kind of thing.
I thought about that the other week. Did you like what I did though?
Yeah, that was smooth. That was nice. You gave me the FTP or the Sync thing. Look at you. That's because I don't have it up on a droplet, which is really what I need to do. Okay, are you ready for the spotlight? You ready to give a little love to something that you and I have had a tough time with recently?
I am.
I just think this is worth noting. I'm full disclosure here. I'm no longer running Ubuntu 16.04, but I did say in the review that if I started to see snap packages come out for some of the applications I use, I would consider running it as my daily driver. And this week, Telegram has been packaged as a snap package for a 16.04, and this is a big one for me. And I don't know if we're going to see this as a trend. I've seen a few other apps packaged up as snaps, so now you don't have to go get a PPA or anything like that. The snap will just install. In fact, I guess you can install it by just searching for Telegram in the Software Center, or you could just do sudo snap install Telegram dash Serginus or Serginus, or that's the guy's name. It's a Canonical employee who is the one that packaged this up. So it's not Telegram themselves, which is a little disappointing in my opinion, because I was hoping to see industry momentum here. But right now, it's a Canonical employee is doing this, and it has the advantage of being sandboxed. So it should be, in theory, more secure, except for the fact that X11 is an insecure piece of crap. So it's sandboxed, but X11 sort of kills that for you. But it looks like it's a legit way to install the snap version right there. No, I mean, this, if you got this, maybe HaruPad, 15 other applications, I would do it. I would do it. I mean,
I'm looking down right now at Telegram, Slack, Quasar, Simple Note, Firefox, Thunderbird, Chrome, Inkscape. Like if I have a handful of packages, I'm good. Like I'm golden. I'm the Walmart of Linux users, and that started as kind of an install. I'm embracing that.
That's near mine. Mine's got a few more. Like Chrome would be another good one to get in there.
It's Chrome. I said that.
I would like to see Chrome sandbox that thing. Sandbox all them Google apps. Sandbox all your apps. That's what I say. JupiterBroadcasting.com/lastpicks. It's a community effort to keep that pick site up to date. It's fairly recent, I think. So if you want to get a good idea of some of our past picks, you can find them there. If you'd like to submit some, linuxactionshow.reddit.com. There was something I wanted to mention at the top of the show, but I have completely forgotten what it is. So I have a solution for that. I figure once we get into the rest of the show, that's when it'll come up. That's when it'll hit me. So I don't remember what it is now, but we'll tell you about it later. Little tease. All right, Noah, let's do the news.
Hey, it's the news, and this episode is brought to you by
Ting.com. Everybody, once you go to last.ting.com to check them out and support this show, they are mobile that makes sense. No contracts, no early termination fee, and you only pay for what you use. It's just your minutes, your messages, and your megabytes, and they add them all up, whatever buckets you fall into. That's all you got to pay. Like, if you just had, like, an hour's worth of minutes, like 60 minutes, you'll just pay for 60 minutes. If you used 75 minutes, you pay for that. You don't have to pay like for 200 minutes or 800 minutes or whatever. Do you remember, Noah, back in the day when they had like special gimmicks? The telcos had special gimmicks where you had like nights and weekends for free. Like after 7 o'clock, you could make a call that was like at a different rate.
Yeah, and then do you remember it evolved into like you could pick like your 5 closest friends that you could exempt from.
They have tried so many gimmicks over the years, and Ting is the phoenix that has risen from the ashes of all of those bad ideas, and it's just really straightforward. They have the best dashboard in the business. They have the best customer service in the business, just straight up. So then then all they had to do is make it simple. No crazy gimmicks to remember, no special leap plans, no extra little things you have to do with insurances. Just pay for what you use, go get an unlocked device, bring it to Ting. They have a GSM and CDMA network, so they have a lot of coverage. In fact, this is one of the things that has been really interesting for me to experiment with is where I'm living at right now. Really a lot of trees, really forested. I thought for sure CDMA would have been the way to go. I switched out for a Ting GSM SIM when I went to the 5X. Way better signal there. And it's nice to have that kind of flexibility without having to change anything up. I just switched out SIMs, easy, good to go. Really love the Ting service, and you will too. Last.ting.com. Go check them out. They have a bunch of really, really great price devices, starting at feature phones for like $40, $38 there for that refurbished Hawaii, or the Dora XT for $47. And they go up from there. Like they got the Volt 2, $66, a full-fledged Android phone for $66, no contract. And they work their way up to all of the nice phones out there, all the really nice Cadillacs, like the actually, speaking of this, you could get an S7 for free. Ting is giving away an S7. There's a blog about it. They're an unboxing and a giveaway. Usually these go really fast. So if I'm telling you about them now, it probably means the next couple of days. So you can find out more at the Ting blog. Just go to last.ting.com. And thanks to Ting for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. Mobile that makes sense. Our mobile service provider, and it just is easy and simple. I don't have time to mess with the other guys. Thank you, Ting. Last.ting.com. Okay, Noah. Maybe it's a bit presumptive, but I say it's officially arrived once it's hit Debian. Yeah, there's so many things based off of Debian, so many spins, of course, Ubuntu, all of these different derivatives. Once it lands in Debian, like for systemd, for example, once systemd hit Debian, the debate was pretty much over. Yeah, you agree? Capiche?
Absolutely, yeah.
Capiche. So when ZFS lands in Debian, seems like a big
Now we
deal.
can ding the bell. Now we can check the box.
Yeah, ZFS has arrived on the Linux, and this is a big, huge issue. As you all know, this is something that is still a little legally murky. The package is called ZFS-Linux, and it's currently available for Debian unstable users. And there is some interesting tidbits over on Peter Reinholsten's blog, and it's just really nice and straightforward. I liked it a lot. He says, today, after many years of hard work from many people, ZFS for Linux has finally entered Debian. The package status can be seen here, and he links to that. And you can grab it here on Git. And he says it'd be great if you could also help out with the DKMS package. He says it's an important piece of the ZFS puzzle, the DKMS package, an important piece of the ZFS puzzle. We will be talking about that today, coming up. You remember our DKMS ZFS story here. Yeah, we're going to share that coming up in the show a little bit. That is a very important piece that Peter points out. Now, I thought this was interesting because here's now the situation. Ubuntu 16.04 has ZFS. Debian, soon, unstable, but right now in unstable, has ZFS. These are some of the bigger contenders up in the cloud. So this is a pretty big milestone and a major marketplace for both Fedora. We've talked a lot about how Red Hat has been retooling not only just Red Hat with their developer subscriptions, but also Fedora with Fedora Server and Fedora Cloud. We have been talking about how they're retooling their distro to be a server or cloud distro to compete with Ubuntu in the cloud. That's a case you made recently.
Yep.
So it seems to be a very important marketplace. So my first thought was, when we heard this news, was, well, what's OpenSUSE doing? Do you know what OpenSUSE is doing with ZFS?
I have no idea.
Well, good news. R. Brown, chairman over there, was in the subreddit. And I'll just summarize, because I'll link to it in the show notes if you guys want. But his contention is that right now it's the established policy of the OpenSUSE project not to include it by default just because of the legal murkiness of it. He says that's where it's at right now. Even the very maintainer of ZFS for SUSE, because they do have it as like an experiment. But even that maintainer doesn't feel like he's ready to submit it upstream to the main project because he's unclear. So there's still a lot of questions for SUSE. And he suggests that people try out ButterFS. ButterFS is great on SUSE because of ponies and unicorns. They're the only distribution, this is his words, that can boot into a snapshot thanks to how they use ButterFS, true. And no one has made a compelling case, to Richard at least, but who knows who else, for uses of ZFS over ButterFS besides unsubstantiated quasi-religious statements that seem to be full of many times more emotion than any kind of fact, figures, or fundamental technical benefits. So it would seem, for the short term at least, OpenSUSE's position is to pass on ZFS, which I think will probably really going to help their relevance on the server quite a lot. What are your thoughts? Do you think it matters?
I think it matters a lot. I think that one of the leading advantages that BSD has had over Linux is ZFS. And you know, the thing is, even as a person who is comfortable deploying FreeNAS, which is, you know, far and away one of the best file server, you know, distros out there, I have reservations because just last week I was working with a client and they had a problem with their ZFS drive, and I can't pull that drive out, plug it into my laptop, and copy the data off of. We had to bring in a second, you know, loaner server, put that drive in, import the pool, copy all the data off of it. It fundamentally ties my hands with what I can do. And so to have ZFS support on, you know, that on whatever operating system you're using as a daily driver is, you know, to me is going to become in the near future almost mandatory if I'm going to be able to function, do my job, and do things that I imagine tool sets and stuff I'm going to become accustomed to using. I
have two thoughts on it. My first thought is, part of me is kind of like, good, because I would love to see ButterFS get way more exposure, way more people than Facebook and others that are using it, and really get some solid development. I would like to see ButterFS continue to be a viable alternative, especially because I like the license better. It works better in terms of like installers that are out there. I don't really understand why someone at Richard's level, though, is debating the technical merits of it. Not that he's not qualified to do so. He's obviously qualified to do so. It would seem to be completely and totally and utterly irrelevant. Completely irrelevant, because the market demands it. It doesn't matter. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm saying if you want to get more market dominance and relevance, you have to respond to what those people want. Mm-hmm. And if you're not responding to what they want, then they don't choose you. It doesn't matter if ButterFS, in your estimation, is better or not. It matters what the consumers want. And while the people in our chat room might be happy with ButterFS, and I would be happy to see ButterFS get even better and maybe use it myself one day, I think there's a disconnect for someone that's maybe in the chairman level position when that seems to be kind of straightforward. Now, okay, maybe we disregard what consumers want, because maybe the way forward, and I guess I'd like to hear Richard's thoughts on this if he wants to join us on Unplugged, would be maybe the better solution, maybe the better answer is just keep pushing at ButterFS forever, and eventually it gets there. I'll just end on this thought. The big anti-momentum that ButterFS really has going for it is, in enterprise storage, there is this school of thought that goes, a good file system has never lost your data at any point. There's never a file system that you go, well, once it gets to this point, it won't be eating your data. Or once it gets to this point, that RAID hole will be fixed. Or once it gets to this point, that kernel lock issue won't be happening anymore. That's not how it works in the industry. A file system has to be good and reliable always, and you iterate on that using feature sets, and you make things stable. And it has to be an enterprise-grade file system from the moment it goes into production, and that's how Sun did it, right? And they did it right, and they had the resources to do that. The issue we have with ButterFS is that it didn't have that internal maturation process at some large multi-billion-dollar corporation that was on the leading edge of technology. ButterFS has been built out in the open in front of everyone, and so all of its flaws have been there for us all to see. And it has, as such, its reputation has been damaged. And it just simply doesn't matter if ButterFS works great for you and it works with your package manager and you've integrated it with Grub. That's legitimately good stuff, and it's super sweet that it's there as an option for users. So I'm not downplaying it. At the same time, that doesn't negate the fact that consumers want ZFS or ZFS, and the industry has moved that direction, and it has caused massive BSD adoption in the meantime.
Well, and that's not, and
Ubuntu has it now.
You know, this might be not a very polite thing to say, but, you know, if you have one person that has a professional, very well-rounded and very well-backed professional opinion of something, that's not to say that there aren't hundreds of thousands of other industry professionals that have a different opinion, saying that you know, people like Alan Jude, right, would tell you that ZFS has a number of advantages and could probably make a very solid argument for why ZFS is legitimately a better, from a technical perspective, a better solution than ButterFS.
Oh, sure, yeah, of course. You could have two different file system geeks argue all day long. Okay, now this is truly my last thought on it. I think it does sort of represent a disconnect that we in the Linux and open source community often have from the market realities, because not only is it ignoring the realities of what consumers want, right or wrong, it's also sort of ignoring the fact that there is a brand aspect to how people pick. When you have to make a decision about something and you are completely sort of new to it, as human beings, something that has a brand associated with it feels safer. So if you're traveling somewhere and you see some weird water versus a smart water bottle or a Fiji water bottle, and you're not sure about the quality of the water, you will probably buy the name brand for safety. Same when you're buying. Are you following me, Noah? Like consumers,
absolutely.
And IT, even CTOs often buy into brands.
But it simply comes down to
ButterFS has a bad brand, and ZFS has a good brand. There is an enterprise of businesses literally being built around the ZFS brand name. Entire product lines are being developed around the ZFS brand name. You raise the esteem of your operating system when you can associate your brand with another brand that is a shooting star. That's why Red Hat Enterprise Linux rushed Docker 1.0 into the distribution before it was ready, because Docker was a brand name that made Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 more valuable. Even though it wasn't ready, they shipped it because it made the product more valuable. Now, ZFS, I think you could argue, is in a way better development state than ButterFS is. ButterFS still calls itself experimental. Issue number one right there. Ain't nobody with billions of dollars worth of data and infrastructure that has irreplaceable data is going to trust an experimental file system. All right, okay, right. I'm done.
No, you're right.
Now let's talk about Fedora.
Oh boy.
I read the headline and I thought, yes, finally. H.264 support is coming in Fedora Workstation thanks to OpenH.264 plugin from Cisco. This seems like great news, right, Noah? Finally, built an H.264 support right into Fedora. Except there is some devastating limitations. And it's going to make things even more complicated because instead of just videos not working, different versions of H.264 videos won't work. It's limited use, and it only supports the baseline profile of H.264. That is old and crappy. And most stuff distributed online, and even like the stuff you can download now from YouTube DL if you use YouTube DL and it's high quality, is all high profile. So you know about the different encoding profiles for H.264, right? No, and is there like a super quick way to explain what that is if you're not familiar? It's basically
you compromise on quality to get faster transfer.
Yeah, and decoding. It makes the decoding less complicated for the player. And so this is a huge issue because anything that's not baseline won't play. But yet your system will register as having H.264 support. And then the other thing is, I don't believe there is any AAC support. So the majority of professionally shipped MP4 files aren't going to play. So this is a kind of a drag, really. Now, it does mean things like WebRTC will probably work, or Google Hangouts, I think, uses baseline. But that's kind of it. Like, your YouTube's going to be all funky. What's going to happen is YouTube will work for you because it's going to fall back to WebM. A lot of websites will fall back to WebM, so some of you won't notice. But it's, I don't know. It's kind of like a halfway thing that doesn't really solve the problem for users and seems to make it more complicated. But hopefully they can work with Cisco to get more than baseline support. I don't know.
I would imagine, a lot of that stuff comes back to, it all comes down to licensing, right? And, and when I've had conversations in the past with people, that's the line that they draw. And so my question has always been, and I've never really gotten a good answer to this, is if the industry standard is based on something that is more difficult to propagate to a wider range of people, and we have alternatives that work basically just as well. I mean, if you look at Vorbis, it is, or maybe FLAC is probably a better example. FLAC does not, as an uncompressed audio capture format, does not really lack anything, as compared to Wave. And yet, for whatever reason, every device ships with Wave support and doesn't support FLAC. And so we perpetuate this cycle of Wave being the industry standard and FLAC just being the just as good industry alternative that is free and could work easily, but we just don't have that. And we run into that limitation. I had my camera, right? It cuts files after 1.7 gigs. And the reason for that is because they have to license the FAT file format thing from Microsoft. And all I can think about is, why do we do that? Why do we base industry standards in things that cost companies more money and you can distribute to a less audience?
I think two things. I think industry compatibility is a huge pressure that's sort of murky and nebulous, and so you just kind of fall into everybody just sort of falls into using FAT and then gets sued by Microsoft, and then all it has to fall into licensing it. And I think that's a huge driver of really sort of why you sort of see people using sort of stuff that there's better versions of. I think the other thing is, like, and if you keep it, your audio one's a great point. I think if you kept it to video, I would throw a little shade on Google. I think Google screwed all of us by having VP8 and WebM as a whole be such a shithouse. Like, it's the biggest stinker in video ever. And so, and the thing is Google didn't go at it sort of with humble, and they didn't go at it with sort of like an understanding that they were new at the scene and this was their first attempt. They came at it like, we're super genius, we've cracked high fidelity video delivery online, and we're giving it away to everybody. It's VP8 WebM, have at it. Booms! And they dropped it, right? And then we got our hands on it, and it turned out it's the slowest thing to encode ever. It takes the most CPU to decode. It has the largest file sizes, especially stacked up to X264. I mean, it is just a piece of crap. And so VP9 looks a lot better, right? But the issue is they blew it with VP8. They blew it. And now we don't trust them. And so people just stuck to H264. That was our moment, and Google screwed us. That's my estimation on it. All right. Fedora. Oh, how you tease me with your fresh packages, your Rawhide, your new GNOME packages that I have to wait till your stupid release date to actually use, and by that point I could have been using it for 2 months in Arch. Oh, GNOME. Oh, I mean Fedora. United RPMs is here to unite together to save us, Noah. Check this out. It's a new RPM Fusion alternative for Fedora 24 and 25. RPM Fusion is bad if you like to use unstable releases of Fedora. It can be kind of done, especially if you use the Russian Fedora repository, but it's painful. The United RPM repository will provide the most popular multimedia packages for Fedora 24 and Rawhide. Things like VLC, MPV, GNOME MPV, which is, by the way, way better than VLC for me these days. SM Player, KDN Live, Handbrake, a few others. KDN Live's mentioned twice. And the idea here is you'll be able to run yourself a super current version of Fedora and still have all the goodies you like. And it looks like, actually, at the time of doing show prep, they didn't have GPG signatures for some of these things. So that's a big no-no. So bear in mind, at the time of prep, they did not have GPG signatures for their packages. That sucks. And something that you guys who are more cognizant and aware of your licenses will not like the fact that they have not separated out packages and non-free packages. That's all mixed together. I figure if you're using United RPMs, you probably don't care. But as an example, once you add their repos on Rawhide, I got a command, a DNF command in the show notes. You run that one command, you install all of the codecs you need. So screw that open H.264 baseline crap. You run this one command, and you get all of them using this United RPMs. Now, I think, Noah, the reason why I like to track this kind of stuff is Fedora is sort of like my maybe one-day distro that I might jump to. We'll see. So I think this is United RPMs. I think if they get their crap together, they get their packages signed, make sure they're using HTTPS for everything, then I think it could be a really good initiative. So if you're a Rawhide user and you've been missing out on the packages that make you feel like an actual human being, now you can get those installed. Do you remember as leading up to our Ubuntu 16.04 review, we were hearing just tons of people are having issues with Intel Skylake graphics?
Yes,
and we've seen it.
Really, that has not stopped. Yeah. Like in fact, I had a very long conversation with someone the other night, and we were talking about how some of those things have gotten fixed, but there are still a plague of issues.
An inside source, Noah? Well, something like that. This could be a good sign. Intel is restructuring their graphics driver in a big way. Maybe this might remind you a little bit of how NVIDIA does it. So up until now, in case you weren't aware, the Windows and Linux graphics drivers have been isolated from one another, being developed by different teams at the company. In fact, that's also led to, at times, like right now, the Windows OpenGL driver has a support for OpenGL 4X, when the Linux one is still at 3.3, although that's about to change. So, kind of makes sense. Windows has got a big market share. But Intel says, after some recent shenanigans and whatnot, they're going to try to combine the divisions. Now, they're not going to just port the Windows driver either. They're going to focus on an OS-agnostic driver model moving forward. We have limited details at this point, but Phoronix is covering it. And so he thinks there's going to be more driver abstraction. But the idea of consolidating the Windows and Linux drivers team is not unusual. And even though to some of us it might sound like a bad idea, NVIDIA arguably has like the best proprietary graphics driver available for Linux. And they use a shared code base for their Windows driver, FreeBSD driver, Solaris driver, and Linux driver. AMD's also working on a similar setup. And NVIDIA, has managed, because of that, to deliver really great performance under Linux, oftentimes right on par or exceeding what Windows does with the shared driver model. Also, you got to figure there's just probably a lot more money there. I think this could be a good thing as long as they continue to contribute upstream to the Linux kernel and they get it right. This could be a good thing, especially if they continue to push this graphics line forward. I don't know, Noah. I'm tepidly excited, and I'm hoping this means we're going to see improvements for future editions. Like, so far, Intel's got it really right, except for they've stumbled recently. And I feel like they're responding to that stumble pretty aggressively.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing is that's why I haven't gotten all torqued out about it. I've watched a couple people have some issues, but that's kind of my feeling on it too. For the most part, Intel has been super, super friendly to us Linux guys. Like, in fact, I was just working on a project, and in the project, I made the statement that basically, if you go and buy something that has Intel in it, Intel network drivers, a network card, Intel graphics, Intel sound, all that stuff, basically, it's going to work out of the box. And I've never had that not be true until very recently. People have had some trouble with Skylake. So everyone gets a chance to screw up every once in a while, right?
Yeah, I hope so. Otherwise, I'm in a whole lot of trouble. All right, so there's a couple of big game announcements. One of the top-rated stories, I think, like Civ 6, it was announced it's going to be coming to Linux later this year, and people are super excited about that. I'm not a Civ user, so I might not be getting the version right. I just saw that was in the subreddit. It was a top story. I am excited about this. It's already out. It's a multi-platform release on day one. I love it when they do that. And if I'm ever in a position to vote with my wallet, I try to reward those developers and say thank you, and I try to grab it under Linux. My key stats, by the way, to make sure the count goes towards Linux, purchase from Steam under Linux, download and play it under Steam under Linux too. Super important. You can't just buy it under Linux.
There was some discussion a while back. If anyone in the audience has documentation that Steam is keeping track of when you purchase games under Linux and when you play them under Linux,
said they have. I think they said they have. I don't know where you find it in writing, but
yeah, right. If anyone can find some way to prove that, it would be super helpful.
Yeah, because I always try to make sure I purchase it under Linux, and I know playing it under Linux is counted. So the game I'm talking about is Stellaris.
A nearly endless expanse of stars and planets in which unimaginable wonders are waiting to be discovered. Guarding those wonders is the vast distance between the stars and the threats that can be found near each and every one.
So it's like an epic strategy game, and here's what I really liked about it. Now, I just picked it up because I saw it and I thought, I don't, these strategy games where you got to like manage a spreadsheet and you got to like, check all your people. I don't want to do that. Yeah, but then I read that it was actually pretty easy to follow along and get into, so I went ahead and I picked it up, and one of the first things that I noticed about it that really appealed to me, other than the fact that it's freaking gorgeous, and I'll start a new game so you can just kind of get an idea of what it's like, and I'll just jump through some of this, is you can start, if you do the United Nations of Earth, or whatever it is, because like I just said, I just started, you get to start in the freaking solar system, which...
Good day, Madam President. I am Veer, a prototype synthetic intelligence. My job is to offer advice and assistance as we seek our destiny among the stars.
So I can look, this is our solar system, which is really fun to just be able to play in here, which makes it way more interesting to me when all of a sudden, like, it's our own planet. So I'll go to view Jupiter right now. Yeah, look at that. It's crazy gorgeous. You can move around. I mean, it's almost worth just for the visuals. And it has full guides or no guides.
An excellent decision. You will have my full support.
And you can play online or offline. It's really pretty. So there you go. I mean, just for the graphics alone, Noah. Look at that. And I love space games under Linux. That's something special for me. So there you go, Stellaris, and it's out right now. And then the new Civ game, getting all the attention, coming out really soon. So check it out. And here's the only downside: it is full price right now at $40. But I bet if you waited, put it on your wish list, I bet you that'd come out on sale real quick.
Yeah, there'll be a Steam sale.
Yeah, and then just a heads up, not really going to impact your daily life, but XDG app, that magic we've talked about that promises to bring universal applications to all Linux desktops, has been renamed to Flatpak. So XGG app has been renamed to Flatpak, and Flatpak is a clever name for those things from IKEA that make furniture easy to distribute, unpack, and install. There you go. So Flatpak is the new universal application, like sandbox, distribute your apps for every Linux desktop. I don't know about Ubuntu, but every other Linux desktop out there. And not a bad name. Flatpak's not bad. I think it's better than XDG app, which is hard to say. I can say Flatpak, Flatpak, Flatpak. All right, Noah, that's all the news for this week. And now, a moment I've been waiting for nearly 10 years. That's actually legitimately true if I would have waited until June to make that statement. That close. Production under Linux. I've been on this show and I've said I think it's 10 years out. I just couldn't see it. But maybe I just didn't have the right perspective, because the open source community, when you challenge it, it's amazing what they can get done in a short amount of time. And so we're going to walk through the hardware builds that we have gone with, the software installations we have gone with, and the whole setup overall, like a high-level overview of it, to show you how we are doing live 24/7 media production under Linux. And I think it's a major milestone, and I think it's one that eventually other podcasts that want to do live video and of all kinds, I think it'll be something that eventually the entire industry, I think it's something that's going to shake up companies like Telestream who make Wirecast, and companies who make hardware switchers. I think this is huge. So we'll tell you all about it in just a moment. But first, I want to thank Linux Academy for making this segment possible. Go to linuxacademy.com/unplugged. We got such a great deal for the Unplugged program. We brought it over to LAS so you can take advantage of it. Linux Academy is a platform built by Linux users, enthusiasts, who wanted to help spread the word about Linux, got together with developers and educators, and then, lo and behold, managed to run a well-built business and created Linux Academy. It's growing all the time with staff added constantly. They now have 2,390 self-paced courses. Scenario-based labs that put you in the middle of real tasks so you get actual hands-on experience. Instructor mentoring is available when you need it, which is such a big deal for this level of courseware. Graded server exercises help those of us who have testing anxiety. That's one of the, that's, I think, one of the biggest differences between Noah and I when it came to IT, too. Noah isn't afraid to pursue the Red Hat certifications and take those courseware. He's even tried Linux Academy for that and take those tests. For me, I lock up when it comes time to actually take the tests because it feels more like a memorization game than anything else. That's why the graded server exercises and the mentor help is a big win for me. The other thing I like about it is they help put concepts into just hours. It's going to take me 6 hours to learn Ruby, that kind of stuff. In-depth resources, practice exams, detailed comprehensive notes you can download, and the servers come with it. 7+ distros you choose from, and everything automatically adjusts to that distro, the courseware, the virtual servers. Check them out. They also had a recent round of success. It's pretty great. They have a post up on their blog for people who've gotten different courseware. Yeah, go ahead.
I actually did Red Hat 7 training exclusively on Linux Academy, as opposed to 6 I did exclusively in traditional course. So it was kind of fun to do that back to back and kind of see the differences between the two. As far as taking the tests, it's funny because the tests really get me nothing, right? Like, my clients don't care. They are paying us to do a given thing. It's not like anyone checks my credentials, and it's not like my boss cares if I have credentials or not. But the Red Hat exam is different from all any of the networking, Cisco stuff or whatever, in that it is all practical. It is not memorization. It's literally the 26 things they want you to do, and then you do them. And either you can do them or you can't. But I think there is a difference. There is a difference between that exam and a lot of the others.
Yeah, that does sound more my speed. So thanks to Linux Academy, and you guys can support this show and get a great discount. But going to Linux Academy, go there just to try and look too. But sign up if you would. linuxacademy.com/unplugged. All right, so we want to start off by discussing the hardware we went with.
Just out of curiosity, would it be useful to start at how this whole thing came to be?
Yeah, sure. That sounds fun. Let's do it.
So 1 year ago, we had the plans to go to Linux Fest. And shortly before that, I was discussing with a couple of our producers, and I said there was some software packages that were out there specifically for switching video inputs, which is kind of the last piece of the puzzle. And so if I hacked together that with a couple other pieces of software in a really hacked together way, I thought maybe we could do Linux Fest on Linux. And a couple of our producers said, listen, Linux Fest Northwest that's our football game. That's our season. And so
our Super Bowl, as it was.
Yeah, Super Bowl. Yeah, that is not the time to try new things, to play with things. So don't cloud the waters. Don't screw things up. Let's just do it like we've always done.
Just use the Mac. We know the Mac works. Right. It'll be fine.
And as it turns out, Chase, is a true professional. He has all of this stuff already set up and already working and already tested, and he's done it numerous times. So having him fly in is almost as good, in fact, in some ways better, than having a production company come in and just run the for us. And then we just show up and we're just simply the host, and everything else is just kind of taken care of. So that was what we were going to do. And then Chase, got sick and wasn't able to make it that year. And we get to Wednesday of Linux Fest, Linux Fest is coming up in 3 days.
On Friday.
We have no idea what we're going to do. And we don't even have the hardware to take out to Linux Fest. And so we're trying to figure out what we're going to do. And I am at night trying to bang away, find some way that we can get.
Just to pause you for a sec, I would point out that there was even the consideration, maybe we drive down to the Apple store and put a Mac Pro on a credit card. That was even a possibility.
Because there was, or not stream, or just not have.
Yeah, that was another possibility. Yep.
Because we're literally running out of ideas. And I'm trying to get OBS working because I'm told that's, it would be a good software to use, but I can't really get it to build and I can't get it to install. And eventually I flash the Bonobo and I get it working, and I swear it was like a 12-year-old little girl. I go running up the staircase. So first of all, when Chris goes up the staircase into his office, that's his polite way of saying, I don't want to be around other people and I need to get work done, so leave me alone. And unless it's earth-shatteringly important, don't bother me. And this is right before a show, and I go running up the stairs with his Bonobo going, Chris!
I do. Boom, 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 boom. Up the stairs. Yeah. I was like, whoa, what is going on?
Chris looks at me. what are you talking about? And I'm like, look, OBS works on Linux. I got it to work. Look, I can switch inputs on these 2 little webcams that I have hanging out, and I think we can use this. And great. Go get it working on a computer that we can actually take. I'm doing show notes. So you're in the middle of TechSnap, and Q5 and Rakai and I are out in the living room trying to piece together this old computer that you had, trying to make it work, and we can't get it to power up. And Rakai and I literally drove to Best Buy like 5 times. We bought a new power supply, brought that back, didn't work, took it back, brought new RAM, brought that back, didn't work, bought a new hard drive. So eventually you come out and I'm like, Chris, listen, I know you don't have any money, and I know there's no way to really do this, but we need to have a new computer if we're going to make this work. And so Chris goes, first he says, I'm really hungry, which should have been really important to note right
true.
then.
That was it. I did say that.
And then immediately following that, he goes, fine, let's just go. We'll figure it out when we get to the store. So we drive.
That means, damn it, I'm going to put this on my credit card.
Yeah, we drive all the way down to Renton, and
which is like an hour and 45-minute drive.
And Chris is getting hungrier and hungrier, and we get into Fry's, and eventually we pick. Alan was great because he's like, this is the processor you want, and this is the RAM you'll want, and this is the best. So he picks all this stuff out, and we get it all. We take it up to the front, and we realize the astronomical bill that's coming. So I think it was Alan, you, and I all split the. Yeah. We each bought a couple different.
Which
components.
is really nice of you guys.
Well, so Chris says, he tells the guy, he goes, and this is what happened. Chris
Not
goes,
just that guy. I told 2 different representatives at Fry's.
Back when we pick the parts out, and then they scan them into the little computer, and then you take them up to actually go buy the parts, because we can't just do that once. Then Chris looks and he goes, so we'll just split this between the 3 of us. And she looks at him, he looks at Chris and goes, yeah, we can't do this. And here was Chris's response. You're telling me you guys are at Fry's and you can't get that mother piece of... To split cards between 3 people. That's what you're telling me right now?
This computer store can't split things by 3. You can't divide by 3 at Fry's.
So it was okay. We adapted and overcame. Alan picked up a couple of components. I picked up a couple of components. You picked up a couple of components, and we take it back. Now this is Thursday. So then we walk out and we realize how hungry Chris really was. So we go get food. And then we drive the hour and a half back to the studio, and this is Thursday night, so we're leaving for Linux Fest the next morning, and we get back at like 10:30 at night, and Chris is like, well, I have to go to bed, so you take off, you go home, and Alan and I are up, and you can go back and watch the episode after Linux Fest last year, is because we had been going on, 24, 26 hours now without sleep, and we're trying to build this computer, and we get the computer built, but there was this like random assortment of hard drives that we had found from the studio. And we're like literally 6 or 7 of them.
Scrapping it together. Scrapping it here.
Shoved into the box, right, and just tried to make it work. And of course, we found this bug that apparently in Ubuntu, at least prior to 1404, if you cannot boot off of SDA-H or whatever. Like you reach a certain level and you can't install the bootloader, and then it just doesn't boot. And so Alan is trying to troubleshoot Grub. Meanwhile, I'm just like, let's take the case off and just change the cable so it's SDA-A, and then it'll just work. And so we're trying to figure it out.
And
eventually,
what does Alan say? What does Alan say to that?
Well, he was like,
he opens up the terminal. He's like,
BSD, I could do this in Grub. So eventually Alan goes to bed. So now it's just me, and it's like 3 a.m. And so eventually I'm like, screw it. So I take the side of the case off.
Alan is literally in the chat room right now, still hating on it. He's still in there hating on it right now.
Listen, in his defense, he's right. He was right. It's a really stupid bug to have. And then, and this is on Twitter, you can go find it. Popey didn't think it was funny. The rest of us did. We got a error message when we tried to install Ubuntu, and it said could not find path of /cow, which we didn't know what that means. Or it could not find canonical path /cow, which just seemed like so Q5 tweets to Popey something about like we just grepped the barn and got the horses and then it worked, and he didn't think it was funny. We thought it was hilarious.
That's pretty good, especially for like 3 a.m.
So then like 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. we finally get the machine working, and we plug all the cameras in and it works. And I set it aside, and like a couple hours later, you come in and I'm like, here, look, it works. Now let's take it out. And I think you barely had a chance to even look at it before we drive it all the way out to Linux Fest.
Which was the first time I'd ever seen it with an actual HDMI device hooked up, or actually seen it connected to the internet and streaming.
Right. And I was speaking at a normal volume too, which probably helped. Yeah. We take it all the way out to Linux Fest and ran the entire Linux Fest with, and I want to say it didn't drop once.
Yeah, it was pretty solid. Yeah, it was pretty good.
So, and then I took that same rig and I put it inside a broadcasting case inside of basically a mobile rack mount, and we shipped it all the way to Self. And I ran the whole weekend on self with that equipment and no problems at all. So on Linux at LinuxCon this year, Rakai and I tried to repurpose one of the old NUCs, and basically what we were trying to do was see if we could use it to stream the reruns on OBS. Could OBS be reliable enough to continue to stream reruns constantly?
Essentially, it runs the majority of the live stream because we're live for a few hours a day, and then that machine takes over and runs the stream the rest of the time.
And so then after 4 or 5 months, that brings us to, I think, where you were going to start with Linux Fest this year.
Yeah, so this year, Noah was coming out, and he decided to come out a little early because we had some projects we wanted to work on. And really, the meta project is always get more of the production on open source software, less production on Mac and Wirecast. And just keep moving that direction as much as possible. That's always been sort of the general goal and momentum of our show. So when this Linux Fest came around, it seemed like the perfect opportunity to solve a few problems that we had. In fact, you did a good job of writing the ones down, Noah, that we wanted to solve. But essentially, a couple of things that I wanted to solve was I wanted to take some priority and importance away from our Mac and reduce the workload it does. And so now it's just a basic camera switcher right now at this point. It's no longer handling the live streaming. We've moved that over to this OBS machine, which is handling that and also a bunch of other things that we're going to get into a little bit later in the show. So this April was really our opportunity to finally put this machine into production. But based on the experience we'd had in the past year, we wanted to do it right. And there's a couple of things in production you can do to make sure you do it right and things actually work. And that is have a backup. And not just like a data backup, but like a physical computer backup. If you build one computer, build two computers, because then you have a backup and you can switch over. And so,
which nobody gives you any credit for. The rest of before Linux Fest this year, nobody was really giving a whole lot of credence to your absolute insistence to have these two identical machines, right?
Yeah,
we did it. Like you told it, Rick and I to build it, so we're building it. But I don't think any of us really bought in the way you bought in to having this dedicated, identical backup.
Turned out we needed it right away. And so with that, we decided the best option would be, because of A, budget reasons, I was paying for this out of my personal funds using Bitcoin, and B, because we wanted to have a very intimate understanding of the way these computers work because of the kind of production work they do. The more we understand the PCI slot layout and all of the different little weird things about which ports are on which USB bus and all of the little tiny things that you need to know to make these machines work right, it just made a lot of sense for us to build. And so we started out with a pretty solid motherboard, something we've used in production in the past, a gigabyte motherboard, a GXX99. And at $250, we'd hoped this would be a great motherboard, and we bought two of them. Like I said, we want to have backups. But that didn't work so well, did it, Noah? The gigabytes?
Because it's a piece of junk.
Yeah, I mean, people watching, I know a lot of people watching love Gigabyte, but we had two dead.
You're all wrong.
Two dead motherboards in a row. So we ended up opting to actually go with the Asus AX99As. And $225, they're slightly cheaper, and they're just a great motherboard. They're not like the most new thing anymore, but they have 69 reviews on Newegg and 4eggs. Really nice, tons of good connectivity. I mean, you worked with this board the most. Any thoughts about this motherboard overall?
Yeah, so I'll just this really sums up what I think of that board. When we had the gigabytes, Rakai told me, he's like, "You're working with Gigabyte. I suggest you assemble the entire thing outside of the case and test everything first." And I laughed at him. Like I was literally like, "I've never assembled a computer like that. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life." And assemble the whole thing in the case and then plug it in. Guess what? Doesn't work. So then I had to take the whole thing out. When we got to the Asus boards, then I was in my wheelhouse, and we assembled. I did the first one outside of the box because I was butthurt. But then after that, the next two, I assembled the entire computers, put them into the position where they were actually going to be, where they were actually going to work, and then plugged them in and turned them on because I had that much confidence that it was going to work. And guess what? Didn't get bit any of the 3 times I did that. So,
good. Yeah. So we ended up buying. We'll get to that. We ended up buying 3 of these in total, pretty much for the same reasons as discussed earlier. The video graphics card, we needed to have something that was semi-powerful that could do accelerated encoding and For that, we opted to go with the EVGA GeForce GTX 960. $184 card with 2 gigabytes of RAM, clocked at 1.127 megahertz. And the nice thing about this is it's got 1024 CUDA cores. It's not the biggest thing out there, but dead simple NVIDIA driver setup. OBS works out of the box now with the most recent version, which we haven't experimented with much yet. But out of the box now, it supports the NVIDIA accelerated GPU encoding. So we can do local recordings of our streams and have that be NVIDIA accelerated or GPU accelerated. I don't know, Noah, any thoughts on the graphics card?
I love EVGA, and I think they make some of the best graphic cards in the world, and I've never had a problem with one. And so I was glad that that's what you chose to go with.
Yeah, and we had done Intel on past machines, and it just wasn't quite enough horsepower. Then for RAM, just really quickly, we went with these G-Skills, 32 gigs of RAM in these machines, and that seems to be sufficient. And no, we don't seem to be having any issues with the amount of RAM. And then, of course, for the central CPU, for the main horsepower, for that, we went with the Core i7 5820K Haswell. 6 cores.
He did not tell me, Rakai did not tell me what processor you picked out or what he picked out, what you both picked out when I got there. And after I installed it and I boot the computer up, he goes, hey, go cat proc CPU info and tell me what you think. And I'm like, something's not right. Something's not right here. Where are all these cores here?
Because with hyper-threading, that thing clocks in at 12 cores, which is great for any kind of media workload, and that's $389. Then you throw it in a case, and that's all you really need. You need a power supply. We didn't need any optical media. We did decide to put a lot of storage in one of them, so that way we could have lots of archives of recordings, which I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. So that was sort of nice, and that's one off about these builds. So one machine has a lot more storage than the other. So in total, with that specs that I just read to you, we built the OBS streaming rig, which is the central new rig. We built the video switching. Hold on one sec. We built the hair presenter, as we call it, which is this computer, which is what I'm showing you the visuals. And this is our backup computer. So the computer that I use to drive the screen now, that's sitting here in front of me, is a spec for spec duplicate minus the extra storage of our OBS machine. And if anything happens to that OBS machine, it's just a matter of moving software configs over, and this guy can light up as our physical hardware backup, which is really how you have to have it in production. It also gives us a little bit of flexibility down the road if we want to experiment with new versions or do something crazy, and we could switch over to a backup rig in the meantime. So that's the hair presenter. That's where I sit. And then upstairs is a hair master, and then we have the video machine. So 3 rigs, and here's the thing, not getting to the servers. We're going to talk about the servers in a moment. Here's
Europa.
The thing.
That's the OBS's name. That's named by Rakai.
Europa. Yeah.
Which I can never remember how to spell.
So the OBS rig is called Europa. So those of you who are space nuts know what that's about. And then we'll talk about the servers here in just a second. But before we get to the servers, all of these machines that I just read to you, all of these machines in production are running Antergos, Arch Linux, on machines that run 24/7 doing live streaming. What the hell, Noah? People are probably freaking out right now. Why the hell do we go with Antergos?
Well, we tried to go with, I mean, by tried, I mean, like we briefly talked about it. But so the thing is, to me, is there's a couple of things. And the first is when somebody runs a company, regardless if they're wrong or right, they're right because the ship has to sail. Well, the ship has to sail in one direction. And that extends to the distro that you prefer is the distro that should be running on all of those machines, regardless of what I think, because at the end of the day, you have to be able to shoot those things on a dime. And Rakai has to be able to troubleshoot those things on a dime. And so that alone was enough that I think the decision was kind of made. But even if we had wanted to go with Ubuntu, we couldn't. Well, we could have. The choice would have been to go with 1404. So literally as 1604 is being released, we would have installed a 2-year-old distro because OBS wasn't available. Or we could have installed 1604 and then had no ability to stream because OBS wasn't available. Either way, Ubuntu at that particular time was not really a viable option.
And to be clear, at this particular time, we could have installed Ubuntu 1404 and had 2-point releases behind of OBS, and that would have been the most current version of OBS for Ubuntu. So not only would we have been going with the last release of Ubuntu, we would have been going with a version of OBS that doesn't have the NVIDIA GPU accelerated encoding support that we need, so that way we can do multiple different recordings of the live stream and not kill our processing overhead while we're also live streaming. So it was a sort of a major limitation. And then on top of that, we also wanted to have features like ZFS support for our large storage. And ZFS, which was, I think, maybe an iffy call, ZFS on the root file system too. And the theory here is very simply, we wanted a production file system that supports snapshots. And quite honestly, it doesn't hurt that Alan is in our chat room right now. And if we had a question about ZFS, we have one of the predominant experts on it that we could ask. So that's also a check in our positive, our plus column. That said, those were some of the reasons we wanted really easy out-of-the-box ZFS support. We wanted current OBS. We needed a current NVIDIA driver. And it just kind of ended up making the most sense. And I don't think we've regretted that decision. Now we are what? We are 8 weeks into production now, I think?
About that. No, about a month. Yeah, 4.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
The 20th
I can't remember from when we actually got the hardware to when we actually went into production. But yeah, so we're about a month in on all this being in production. So that's something else we should say. What we are giving you right now is actually still been kind of forming. It has not been flawless. In fact, Rikai and Noah were up till like 5 a.m. working on
last night,
just to make it more awesome, though. But there have been a few bumps we ran into, and I'll start with one that was directly related to us using Antergos. Antergos. So we have opened up a bug about this. Rikai's already opened one, so yes, we will file a bug. But it turns out that ZFS breaks on kernel upgrades. Yeah. I'm going to say that again. If you do a kernel update on Antergos and you're using ZFS, it breaks. It's using DKMS all right to automatically build the kernel module for you. That's no problem. The issue is it's building the kernel module for you after it's already generated the init image. So the image that ends up getting created for your bootloader doesn't have ZFS support. And then that happens, the DKMS module build runs after that's done. So just a simple order process. If you had built your own Arch box, you would probably have put it in the right order, and that wouldn't happen. But the downside of sometimes using a pre-built Arch system, the upside is graphical installer support for ZFS and also a very quick Mate desktop, which is what we opted to use. So that was one of the problems we had, which did prevent us from booting one time, and Rikai had to boot off of a thumb drive and go in there and fix that. And so the other issue that we ran into was more networking related and maybe a symptom of working up until 5 a.m. for like 5 nights in a row, perhaps. I'm not sure which one is worse. Okay, yeah, I am. One's pretty forgivable, really, but both are overall understandable. The first issue that we had was, well, actually, you know what, Noah? Before I tell you what we had, the problem we had, I will give you a visual demonstration of the issue.
You know, I know, right?
Yeah, I know you know. I'm going to give the audience a visual demonstration of the problem, so they at least understand what you were working with and why maybe it happened. Hold on.
And I was going to say, and while you're at that, then you can go ahead and pull up Telegram, where I have preemptively sent you some pictures of my house, so you can. What I would have been dealing with.
Okay. All right. Sure. Oh yeah. Sure. Yeah. Because this is my house. All right. So here you go. This is a little. I'll give you a little tour.
This is Chris's cable management.
This is the OBS rig and where it was sitting at after many days of work.
On the other side of the camera is where our OBS rig sits, tucked off in the corner by the sound mixer over there, a dirty paper towel, and a picture. Is our new OBS rig. Right now it's doing reruns, so if I were live at the moment it would be my face up there, but instead it's Alan and Chris's face. It's an episode of BSD Now running inside VLC, which gets captured by OBS, and it does a really good job of that, which then gets re-encoded and sent out to our various different streaming destinations. You can see all 12 of our cores there, easily handling this workload right now, no problem at all. Of course, we're not doing any local recordings at the moment, but because this guy is just sending up to some droplets, it doesn't have to do a whole bunch of compute, which means it runs steady and reliable, and we can just add more compute power by adding more droplets later on. It's tucked down here underneath the table. Just a standard run-of-the-mill build we did, next to a standard run-of-the-mill mess of wires. In fact, if you weren't careful, you might plug that hub into the wall twice, creating a network loop for your broadcast machine. And then a retired IT professional would have to be the one who found it and fixed it, if you weren't careful. So that is our OBS rig right here, running Linux.
So,
and, the Mate desktop.
to be fair, I haven't been working in that space in a while, but that was a heck of a cable mess. I'll give you that, Noah. I'm looking back at that.
And here's the other thing. I think that network loop has actually been there since August, because when we plugged that OBS machine in, I actually didn't do anything with the switch I put in back in August. So I think, and when we put this new one in, we actually just dropped the cable down from the NUC and plugged it in. So my guess is that spanning tree was enabled on the switch, and so we didn't actually notice that that there was a network loop.
It's just funny.
But the second problem.
I was just gonna say, just
I don't
funny
really
that
have an excuse for
that just happened to be affecting. I mean, it's ironic that the broadcast machine got plugged into a hub that was in a network loop, and that's like a live 24/7. And we're sitting here thinking, what's wrong with Linux? Is there a kernel problem? Is there a NIC issue?
Rakai and I had things in my Amazon cart to ship you new network cards.
I know, it's like, what is causing this problem? So that was, and then we solved it, and I'm not joking. Eureka and I pat ourselves on the back. We said, good job. Let's go do a show. I sat down, did tech talk. There was no issue. I thought, problem solved. Look at us. We figured it out. Silly Noah was punch drunk, sleepy, and then the machine starts going offline. Not once, not twice, but again and again during shows. The chat room's getting frustrated. I'm like, gosh, is it this new Linux rig? Have I finally taken too far of a risk for my business in the name of content? And I realized we might have to roll back to the Mac. And I was devastated. But you and Rikai, after I left I was upset. And after I left, you guys kind of figured it out. I don't want to spoil it. I'll let you explain what happened.
So basically, I'm gonna give myself a little bit of a life raft here. So everything was working. I set everything up correctly. I checked everything. I documented everything I did. Everything was 100%. And then we had a machine blow up, and then beer got spilled on my laptop. And all of a sudden, geez. hold on, because it relates. I promise. And then it turns out that we lost some of the footage that we needed from Linux Fest Northwest.
That's true.
In 12 hours, I had to get all of these packages, these two different computers packed up and UPS'd off, and then still have enough time to drive all the way back to Bellingham so we could reshoot some footage. So in a hurry,
and that's all understandable. Lots of hard, stressful deadlines. And so what happened to our most important machine that must never go offline? What was...
So I ran upstairs and plugged the printer in, and I couldn't find it on the network. So I'm like, I better assign a static IP. So I go to drop in, and like an idiot, instead of logging into the carefully prepared network documentation that I've been keeping since I started trying to do stuff over JB, I just go, we're on 7, I think. 7, I hit it, I add it to my laptop. Oh, look, it prints, nothing else broke, must be fine. And then I leave. Turns out the printer and the broadcast machine may have been fighting for the same IP. So in my effort to conserve some IPv4 space,
so literally, here's why it got us, because we never print, and so the printer would just every now and then wake up and do like a hey, I'm here, a packet, and then go back to sleep. And so it would just happen sporadically, and before we could even troubleshoot it, the problem's resolved because the printer had gone back to sleep. And so it was, out of all of the low layer issues we could troubleshoot, that took us back. That was a good one.
That literally took Rakai constantly running Nmap until he finally caught those two things, and then he sent it to me, and he didn't say anything. He just copied the Nmap and sent it to me, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, that can't be right.
Yeah,
no, that's not right.
Yeah.
Why did he change the printer IP? Why did he? And then we're trying to figure out, because I printed the thing, and so then he's like, well, you must have done it. I'm like, I don't remember doing that, Rakai. And he's like, well, I didn't do it, and we both know Chris didn't do it. And I'm like, yeah, that really only leaves one person, doesn't it?
Yeah. So
Oops.
You heard me tease in that video. We add compute power to this setup by adding droplets, and I think this might be one of my favorite things about this is, in doing all of this hardware setup, we have reduced the CPU load on the Wirecast machine by 80%. And reduced its importance by 90%. I mean, it is
and reduced Comcast's importance by 80%.
That's true. So I'm just saying we are so close. So the only thing Wirecast is right now doing that is not replaceable by OBS at the moment is the type of green screen keying I am doing for this set. some of the camera switching stuff that we're doing. They're working out some of the issues we have with hotkey fixing. It's so close. So that's the first thing we did. The other thing is the OBS system itself, Europa, has significantly lower CPU usage than a machine that's currently, this machine is currently streaming to Scale Engine. We're also streaming to YouTube. We are streaming to Ustream. We are also streaming to JB Live FM and JB Live AM. And the CPU usage on that machine is probably around 40%. Significant. That's amazing. That is a feat not accomplishable on a Macintosh. Now, part of the reason why we are doing that is because we are sending one master stream up to a series of droplets that we call SATCOM 1 and SATCOM 2, and there was a brief SATCOM 3. These droplets are streaming out to the endpoint destinations. So we are able to send one high-quality signal to a droplet, which then sits there and uses its CPU and its fantastic bandwidth to stream out to all the different places. Scale Engine is our primary and main destination. That feeds all of the apps. That feeds everybody's VLC players, Kodi players, et cetera, et cetera. And then the other SATCOM servers go out to the other destinations. And I'll let you take it over from here. So tell us about these SATCOM boxes, what they run, and how all that is interrelated.
So from OBS, OBS, like you said, is sending one high quality stream to SATCOM 1, and SATCOM 1 is kind of our load balancer, if you will. And so basically, it ingests that stream from OBS and then sends it out to like you said, Scale Engine, Ustream, but it also sends it out to SATCOM 2, and then it's also sending to airtime. So that's what's generating the jblive.fm, jblive.am. Now, once SATCOM 2 picks up that stream, it is just sending it straight to YouTube, and then also to a super secret special YouTube that you will only get access to, I believe, if you're a patron, right?
Yeah.
And so,
all right. So yeah, this is something that we're able to do now. Is because we can stream to multiple places over the weekend. We created a new YouTube channel where we are going to stream our live shows to, and then save them. So on our main Jupiter Broadcasting YouTube channel, we have been broadcasting live for about a week or two now. We're live there right now. But we don't save or publish those live streams on our YouTube channel. They constantly get content ID'd, so they would put our main account at risk because we do all kinds of shenanigans on the live stream that YouTube hates, apparently. They also would just massively litter our YouTube channel, just full of because internally we still see them and it's a mess. And it would just blast our YouTube channel with a bunch of live streams of stuff that doesn't really have a clear end or beginning and isn't properly structured. It's more off the cuff and maybe sometimes a little blue collared. So what we have set up is a dedicated Patreon YouTube channel. And during the week, we'll be posting the entire live stream of these shows. And Lass, I think, is the best example of a show that is an entirely different show when you watch it live. Not only do we have more discussions about what we talked about, but there's just one-off stories, there's inappropriate things, there's all kinds of stuff that just don't go in the main show because it would be 3 hours long. Because the live stream's like 3-4 hours long sometimes, or 2 hours if we're doing super crazy tight. So that's going to get published. So if you watch this and you've been like, gosh, I wish I could make it to the live stream, but it's just not at the right time. If you're a patron at patreon.com/today, I'm going to now be able to post these live streams for you. Those of you who have watched for a while, you know that's something I have wanted to do for so long because there's often great content we talk about. Like Noah, I'm going to ask Rita, just as an example, I'm going to ask Rita to put the K3B discussion we had in the pre-show in the outtakes, just so you guys get an example of some of the content. We
just another example. The idea of a second YouTube channel may have come up on the live stream last week by some Indian kid.
Yeah, that's true. So and we're going to try to do this for a bunch of our shows and see how the patrons like it. And it's something that we just didn't have the resources for that makes our Patreon page more valuable. It gives people that are really invested in our show a chance to see stuff they couldn't watch before. And it makes it like maybe another incentive for people to want to support us on Patreon. So I'm super excited about that.
But there's a problem with this, right? And the problem is, how are you going to stop? How does YouTube know to stop the actual live stream part from the 24/7 reruns that are going?
Because our stream's always going. Right. If you go to jblive.tv, we're always live on Scale Engine. So how does it know, Noah?
So we have to have a way to start and stop the streaming service on Satcom2. Well, one way we could do that is just shell into it and start and stop the service, right? But that's boring and that's not cool. And frankly, it doesn't make for, any good show content. So the cooler way to do it is to get a hold of people in your chat room and have them modify JBot to use the DigitalOcean API to turn on and off Satcom2. So basically, when you execute your super secret special command in the chat room,
Yep.
It talks through the API to DigitalOcean, powers Satcom2 up.
Yep.
Satcom2 becomes live, pulls in the feed from Satcom1, and then publishes straight to YouTube, so we have that nice cut of just the live show. Then when you're done, you stop the show, and Satcom2 comes down, and now Satcom1 is just streaming all of the live stuff, but we're not going live to YouTube. Additionally, that means that people are only going to get those notifications in their phone if they're subscribed when there's actually a live show happening.
That's the big thing is when on YouTube,
essentially being automated.
On YouTube, you get a push notification if you subscribe to us that we're live, and we don't want to spam you. We want you to know if you get that push, we really are live. So the ability to turn that broadcast on and off is cool. But what blows my frickin' face off is the fact that we are literally starting and stopping our live broadcast, which is Linux powered, by using a bot in IRC. And this is, if you follow Coda Radio right now, there's a ton of hype around bots and about all these new things that bots can do. And it's like, this is what bots can do. This is awesome.
Right.
And so, yeah, we use that API to turn these systems on and off. So that way we manage which endpoints we want to be at. And it is really slick. So local recordings, now possible using accelerated encoding, which we're still experimenting with. Exclusive live streams for patrons, which we just didn't have the resources before. And this is a way we can do it that just doesn't, it's using automated systems that the only manual process is the point where I'm going to post it to the Patreon, which we'll hopefully have a way to work around that too.
So
it's pretty nice.
The last thing too, I don't want to forget about this is, so we're on location the next day doing Linux Fest, which by the way, totally got saved by Chris's.
The backup for this year. We should mention, we didn't tell that part of the story. That rig that we built for last year's Linux Fest and worked great at other events just wasn't up to snuff for Linux Fest this year. And so we ended up immediately, like within 3 days of having built this second backup computer, needed the backup computer. John Kessler, part of our crew at Linux Fest, drove down Saturday back to the studio and then brought it back up to Bellingham so that way we had a rig for Sunday to do the show.
And went and got us a different monitor.
Yeah.
Even though it didn't have a DVI cable.
And so we were still able to do this year's Linux Fest using Linux as well, which was the prototype setup for some of this. But I think the real sweet sauce is the way we're using the remote VPSs. In our case, they're droplets, and they work great for this. But the way that I think what's really key for making machines reliable is keeping their CPU usage load down.
And keeping their bandwidth on something reliable.
Yeah, because realistically, if we're streaming to 3 or 4 different destinations from within the studio, and I'm on Comcast, well, I'm almost guaranteed at some point to have a bad route or to have Comcast blip and take out all of the streams. This is much more tolerant. It's not perfect, but it's more tolerant.
Well, but so I guess where I was going was, so on Sunday we go to actually do the stream and we're just constantly dropping off. The stream is constantly dropping. Can't figure out why. Eventually, it turns out it's a Comcast issue because what we're doing is we're streaming from Linux Fest Northwest back into the studio, and then that's taking up and going through our traditional route to all of our other stuff. And so basically, what we did was we just kind of broke that tie in between OBS and Satcom1 and tied into that from our remote location, and now we've totally bypassed Comcast in the studio altogether. And we were able to do that. In fact, if I remember right, I think at that point we actually spun up a droplet on the air to facilitate that connection.
Yeah, we did.
Remember?
Yeah, Alan also points out for production machines, clean power. Yeah, that's a good point too.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is and the last thing, which is just not a big deal, but it's a personal huge win for me because I just hated it. Wirecast, each individual show we do on the network has its own production profile. And the way you switch profiles is you close the application and you reopen the application and load the new profile. But to do that, you have to stop streaming and start streaming. And because it's such a piece of crap, the Mac, its old Mavericks or whatever it is, I can't remember. I reboot it once a day too because otherwise it falls apart. And to be fair, in the past, it was running at like max load all the time. And that just looks amateurish to have to take your live stream down before your show starts. People start showing up. They get tuned in on their Kodi box. They're watching on their TV. And all of a sudden the stream goes out. because I'm rebooting, and every single time in the chat room, people will jump in. Where's the stream? Why is the stream down? Did the stream just go down? Because people always inevitably are showing up just as I would take the stream down for reboot. And anybody in the chat room knows that's true. And now, because we have detached the streaming machine from the recording and switching machine, I can do anything I want to any of the production systems in here. I can do sound checks. I can even record a show offline now, which I couldn't do before. I can reload profiles. I can turn that Mac off. I can do a Skype call with Noah, and none of it goes on the stream until I tell it to, and I can switch over without having to reboot the stream on the OBS machine. It's so nice.
You should describe your reaction the next morning after the first night that we switched everything over, and Chris came in for the next day. He walked in, and just the sheer look of panic on his face when because there's a screen that's attached to the Mac, and for the last 10 years, when he walks in, there better be something on that screen, or he better get into emergency mode because something bad has just happened. And I don't remember. We didn't do anything with it, and it went to sleep because it was
the screen turned off because it's like, what's going on? Why is it off? Why is it off? Are we down?
He's like, what's going on? Why is the stream down? It's over there now.
Yeah. And then I guess one other really nice thing is now the JB Live FM and AM audio streams will be live 24/7 with the same content that's on the video stream.
Oh yeah. So that's happening. Originally, that was happening. I said that back in the DigitalOcean segment. So we're trying different pieces of software, and we're trying different configs on different pieces of software.
That's what I wasn't sure about Liquid Soap, if that's open source or not. I don't know about Liquid Soap.
Oh, yeah. I think it is. I don't know. It works. So basically, we installed I had 5 different droplets up with a couple different. We tried Dark Ice, and we tried using actual FFmpeg. And so basically, what we're using now is a software called Liquid Soap. And Liquid Soap basically calls FFmpeg, pulls in the RTMP stream, turns it into an MP3 stream, and then sends that up to airtime, which is then getting transcoded into the high bit rate and the low bit rate for FM and AM. But Liquid Soap, and that up until about 3 a.m. last night, it was running on its own server, and then Rakai and I put that on Satcom 1. So now you've just got those 2 servers to deal with. And we have magic configs.
Nice. Let's see here. I'm looking. It is up on GitHub. I'm looking for the license file. I don't see license, but it's probably on here somewhere. We'll have it linked in the show. Here we go. License. It is GPL. So there you go. We are top to bottom, the entire stack. I think the entire stack is GPL even. I don't know about FFmpeg's license, but FFmpeg might be a BSD or something else, but pretty much the whole damn stack is GPL'd. It's not just Linux and open source. It's almost the whole damn thing is GPL. That is frickin' amazing. That is, wow. And then on the same week that I think I'm switching over to KDN Live, my brain is blown. I don't even know what to make of all of this. It's really exciting. And so the thing that it's set for us now is anytime we're going on location and doing an event or need something that manages camera inputs, we just go Linux and OBS. The Mac isn't even a consideration anymore.
Which is interesting because that actually it opens up a whole new world of flexibility. We went to System 76 and we knew we were going to do a live show from there. And quite honestly, and I mean this with all sincerity, we really didn't plan it. I mean, we knew that we wanted to do it, but we just figured we'd just figure it out when we got there. And that's really where the power of Linux comes in, right? Because we took a Linux box and said, as long as we have access to a powerful Linux box, we know we'll be able to get up on the live stream. And so we took the System 76 provided us with a box. Actually, a guy that works from System 76 provided us with his personal box, and we installed OBS, got everything working, and then started streaming right out to the internet.
Yeah, that is a really good point. It makes the availability a repo away. Now, the version might not be the right version for you, but the fact that it's not behind a paywall, like a Telestream, they're a fine company, but Wirecast is a $500 product, and for the one I need, it's $1,000 to begin with, for $1,000 for each major version. And I have to log into their website to download it. I have to enter in a serial number, which has to activate against their server. And it's proprietary and only runs on the Mac. And so it's not something like Noah said. You couldn't just go set up a powerful computer and start streaming. It's super cool. And of course, we should mention we've done an interview with the OBS or OBS folks in the past, and it's available for other platforms as well. It's a bunch of these different pieces coming together. On the back end, on the Satcom end, it's a lot of FFmpeg and command line stuff. The OBS doesn't have anything to do with it. And on the audio side, it's Liquid Soap. And then on the final audio endpoint, we are using Airstream, which is Airtime. Thank you. Airstream's a trailer. Airtime, which is provided by the Airtime folks. It's a hosted instance that they provide for us, and it is, if you want to get into internet radio, or you want to have a live stream, or you want to have an automated system, mind-blowingly good. Also open source, but they have a pay version and a hosted version. That's where Satcom is sending the audio stream to. So if you want to get into audio streaming.
And Airtime underneath, just like OBS is using FFmpeg underneath, Airtime underneath is using Icecast.
Yes. Yeah, this is a bunch of, we're standing on the shoulder of a lot of open source giants, and it's super exciting. Now that we are in June entering the 10th year of the Linux Action Show, it's taken a long way to get here. And in fact, about a year ago, I was ready to drop video altogether because I just wasn't sure it was ever going to be possible. We're still not 100% there, but we're way closer than I thought we would be a year ago. It's unbelievable.
You know, and this is kind of a minor thing, but it's worth mentioning is, you know, the hardest part about all this is trying 1,000 things that didn't work so you find the one thing that did work. Now that I know what software to use and how to set up the config files and stuff like that, I am 100% confident we could recreate this entire setup from scratch in about 5 hours.
Yeah.
Like, it would not take that long to set. And the hardest part about that, the majority of the time, would be installing operating systems. Actually, installing the software would be like the last 30 minutes.
That's awesome. So we got links to a lot of the stuff we talked about if you're curious about it. And we hope you enjoyed at least the walkthrough of it, even if you're not a production person. I think it's still a pretty big landmark for Linux. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. linuxactionshow.reddit.com for feedback. All right, Noah, let's go do some of that feedback. And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. But we do have some feedback to go through and maybe a little discussion and some other goodies. But I do want to thank our segment sponsor first, and that is System76, creators of machines designed, built, born to run Linux. We checked out the Oryx Pro last week, and it's a pretty solid-looking laptop. Are you still liking it, Noah? Are you still enjoying it?
Very much so. Like I said, the System76, you can only truly appreciate System76 if you run it back to back with something that isn't System76, and then it really then they shine out a little bit.
That is true. Or you go through the massive hassle of building yourself and have to return parts after parts after parts and want to murder Newegg when they won't accept returns. It's an awful process. And man, the customer service, we don't talk about that very much, but they seriously support these machines. They build great desktops and laptops. Check them out at system76.com. Tell them the Linux Action Show sent you. Get yourself something nice. You get to stop fighting with your hardware and just play with Linux. You want a nuke and pave and just install and not worry about it? It's going to work. You want something that's going to be supported for a while? It's going to work. You want to buy local in your local Linux ecosystem? That's System76, system76.com. Okay, so Steven writes in with our first email. It's about the Pyra. Is that how we decided to say it? Lots of attention here. Pyra is actually doing really well. I think it's almost near funded. Hey guys, I noticed you guys were into the Pyra, and Noah was just a little iffy on being ARM-based. There is a Chinese company called GPD that is making an Intel Atom-based handheld PC, and there's even an Indiegogo project. So he links that to you. What do you think, Noah? Did you take a look at it?
I think that I've seen a lot of, I did take a look at it, and there's a lot of other projects like that. But the problem I have is they don't have the backing and they don't have the longevity, long-term track record that Pyra has. And so, yes, this looks great. And yeah, it's x86. And yeah, I tell you what, in 7 years, if this company is still around, they're still making products, I'll definitely give them a shot. But or definitely consider it more. But the thing that appeals to me about Pyra is when they first came out, I thought for sure it was going to be another one of those here today, gone tomorrow companies. And they've actually proved to have a long track record with some real longevity. So if other companies do that, then maybe I'll buy into them. But right now, I'm kind of sold on the Pyra. Yeah,
the other thing about the Pyra, and this is give or take it, but for me, it makes a difference that the OEM is building with Linux in mind, not just because it's going to be more and more Linux compatible or whatever. I'm sure the other one is too. But the whole community is oriented towards Linux. When they're generating images, they're going to be Linux images. When the questions are there, they're asking Linux questions. You're not putting Linux on a Windows 10 device. So
it comes with Debian. Yeah. So our second email comes in from Distroto, and he says, refusing to use closed source. He says, hi guys, longtime listener. I really appreciate the switch off that Noah and Emma have been having. I am an open source advocate with much less success than you guys, so I love to hear people's strategies for getting people to do the right thing. I've been using Linux for close to 20 years now, and I've been toying with Stallman-esque idea I recently thought of, but I have never really heard of it before. Closed source software cannot give public security audits, so how can you trust it? If I'm using somebody else's Mac, for example, I don't know if I'm typing a safe password anywhere, or even if SSL is safe in any browser. So I will not use non-free software as a matter of security. This will, of course, get me in trouble at work because all the conference rooms use Windows. Hee hee.
So
I don't know if you have a response to this, Chris. I mean, my answer is quite simple. I just made a decision 7, 8, 9 years ago that I was done being beholden to Windows. I was done being beholden to Mac. I was done using these companies and fighting these companies. And we're going to get into this a little bit deeper in a little bit, but I was done using companies that want to put me in jail for trying their software before I'm willing to fork out some money to buy it because, they call that pirating. And so I just reached a point where I said, if I am done using Windows and if I can't do it on Linux, then I just won't do it. And if the closest I've come to compromising to that is I will install Windows in a VM and use it for those like one-off utilities for programming universal remotes and controllers and stuff like that. And past that, I will not install Windows on my computer at all. Now that said, I don't have an aversion to using other people. If I sit down at somebody else's computer and they have Windows, I don't make a big deal of it. If you want to go that route, you can. Honestly, I doubt you're going to get anyone to really start thinking about open source security by saying, I'm not going to log into the conference room.
He's drawing a line. He says here, if it's not open source, he's not using it because of security reasons. And I think that's particularly interesting. I'll tell you where I draw the line. For me, the core foundational technologies, in my estimation, have to be open source for you to have any actual long-term visibility over the direction of that thing you are dependent on. So let me break that down a little bit. What I'm actually saying is, if your whiz-bang web app uses Linux as the server and Nginx as the web server, it is, and maybe let's say PHP as your language, it is very beneficial for you, as those being your foundational technologies, to know what's coming down the pipe, to know what changes they're making, to have that development out in the open. That's obvious. That's why Apple open source Swift, even Apple gets it. I think where it makes even a bigger difference is if you're a large enterprise, you're a large business, and your business process depends on this piece of open source code. It's not ideal, it's not a great solution, but you always have that emergency eject of forking. And if the project goes off in a direction that alters your business, you can fork and you can hire an open source developer to come in and maintain that code for you and keep it going. It's not a great option, but it gives you flexibility. If Microsoft or Adobe or Apple discontinues a product line, or Google,
you're just hosed.
You're done. If Google Wave or Google Reader had been open source from the beginning, they wouldn't be gone today. They would still be around. The community would have maintained them. If Etzel hadn't open sourced the Nautilus file manager 10 years ago, when they collapsed, we wouldn't have Nautilus today. Nautilus was originally created by a software company that open sourced the file manager they made. They thought was a better file manager for Linux. And then they collapsed as a company. But because the code was open source, we still use it today. I'm sure it's heavily changed, but you get my point. If it's closed source software, you don't have visibility and you don't have ultimate control over it. That's where I draw the line. Now, if I want to run something on top of that, like Steam or Netflix, I feel like those are replaceable. If Netflix went away tomorrow, I could go on. So things that are less critical, I don't get quite as worked up about it. I definitely. So then I have like a list. Does it run on Linux? Is it within reason of cost? And is it easy enough for me to set up when I reload my machines? And these are kind of like some of the basics. And if it meets a lot of those criteria, I'll go with it. The first criteria, I like to see it meet those, that it's free and open source. And we try always, like today's episode's an obvious example of that, we always try to go that direction completely. But if I can't, that's where I start compromising.
If I'm not missing it, I think his email is basically asking, is it worth doing this from the perspective of trying to enlighten other people? And I don't know that would be an effective method. I don't think anyone is going to sit in a conference room and be enlightened or turned on to open source and open source security measures because you wouldn't log into the computer because the conference room computer is running Windows, right? I don't know that that's an effective method, and I guess that's what I was getting at. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing what he's asking.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you have to meet people at their level, the level they're thinking about this stuff.
And make it an attractive boat to come into, not a
Paranoia.
That's Joe and he doesn't want to come into the boat because Joe's a stick in the mud and is off on his own little island. It has to be, the Linux is the party boat, and we have to make Linux, appealing, and that's why people want to come over. Not, just a different approach. I'm not saying it couldn't work. I'm just saying it's not. That is definitely not my approach. Leave it at that.
So Charlie B writes in with a follow-up to your review last week. Great Oryx review, but sorry, guys. As much as I love System 76, 2 hours of battery life ain't gonna cut it. It's pretty dismal for a laptop these days. He says anything under 4 to 5 hours is a deal breaker in his use case. Of course, everybody has different needs. My mobile rig is a Toshiba 2 Chromebook with a flashed Gallium OS, superb battery life at 10 hours. But I'm obviously not using for video editing, etc. Since I'm on the road all day, battery life is my top priority. Why did Noah consider an XPS 15 instead? Then you could pack that little guy, and you would theoretically get better battery life. Noah, what were you thinking? And by the way, is it really 2 hours or is it more? I mean, you've had another week to test with it.
It might be more for what I was using it for. And again, I don't know how people get the measurement of battery life that they get. I get measurement of, I start a watch, I start working on the computer. When I get the notification that I have to plug my power cord in, that to me is the end of the battery life. And I don't know how, if some people are getting more, some people are getting more. But the reality is, I think that that is not what the Oryx is targeted for. I have an on-the-go laptop. I have my ThinkPad, which I really like for taking everywhere, going everywhere, that kind of thing, and perhaps soon to be replaced by the Pirate. But the Oryx is what I look at it as my desktop that I can take with me when I'm going away for 2 weeks, and I can have a desktop that fits inside of my suitcase. That's what I look at the Oryx for. And for that, I think that 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours is super generous.
I have two thoughts about that. My first thought is that is the right mindset for that kind of computer as a former Bonobo owner. The second thought I have is I think the real issue here is you don't care because you're going from plug to plug. I bet if you tested it, I would be surprised because I think I recall getting 4 hours on my Bonobo when the battery was new. So, and I think that's a nicer rig with a lower power processor. I bet if you turn down your screen brightness to 75%. And
I had it cranked, and I was also editing video. So I mean,
but I bet if you just do a few of those things, I bet you could get up there. But for you, it's sort of irrelevant. And I'd say that's the right mindset for that kind of laptop, regardless.
And let's not gloss over. System 76 makes laptops for you. They have a laptop that is a 14-inch form factor that has super great battery life. The Galago, which by the way, you want to talk about System 76 supporting their product. The Galago, which I bought 3 years ago, something like that, they are shipping me a new battery for it because the battery has reached the end of its life. Now that thing is like 6-7 hours. So they make other laptops. It's just that's not what the Oryx is geared towards, I don't think.
Yeah.
Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about in the feedback segment is I had an experience this week that really kind of ruffled my feathers. And so, we're talking about people and their use of proprietary software and stuff. And I think a lot of us started on proprietary software and then switched to open source. But at that time when you're using proprietary software, I think a lot of us may or may not have torrented some stuff to get the software working or try it maybe before you actually bought it, that kind of thing. And I never hear complaining from Windows users or proprietary software users that talk about how they had to torrent, Adobe Photoshop to get it to work. Nobody seems to ever complain about that. Parted Magic used to be free. You could go download it for free, and it was open source, and that was great. And then they decided to charge $49 for, mind you, when Norton made Partition Magic, it was a couple hundred. They're charging $50 for their seriously enterprise-grade tool that has saved my bacon numerous times and did so again this week. And when they first released it and said that they were going to start charging $50 for a download, not only did I not complain, I was happy to pay to download the software, but I also kind of got a little twerked off at people who were complaining about the fact they had to pay $50. I'm infuriated to find out that those people have been so vocal and so loud and so whiny that now they offer a one-time download version for you for $9. So all of you cheap, whiny, complaining people that are too lazy to go torrent, Parted Magic when you don't have any problem doing that to proprietary software. So not only are you too cheap to support a company that is making open source quality software, but you add laziness and whininess on top of that, they have a version for you. So now you can pay $9 and you download it one time, or you pay $50 and you can download it for 1 year. I, not being a cheap whiny brat, am glad to pay the $50 to have access to that software. There is something to it.
If you switch to the Mac and you go set up a Mac, everything costs money on the Mac. Everything. It's the stuff that is like a GNOME extension that I just install for free, like CPU monitors and stuff like that, cost like $15 something on the Mac. Like everything costs. Twitter clients cost money on the Mac. Everything costs money on the Mac. Mac users don't care. They just don't care. It is a different world. I just did a little Google search for entitlement in open source community, and of course, like 3 or 4 blogs just pop up right away. I think there is something to it. You remember the reaction that the community had when both Ubuntu and Elementary OS added dollar amount next to their download buttons?
Right.
It was a big controversy, right?
I think that's pathetic. I think it's pathetic that people complain about it. I think it's pathetic that people won't pay for it. I think it's more pathetic that people are too lazy to go find a download source like they would for proprietary software. And I think it's insult to injury that they got to complain about it on top of that. It irritates me in a way that I haven't been irritated in a long time.
I understand. I think it's nuanced. I think you're right in a lot of cases. It's an entitlement thing. I think in other cases it is. It's people trying to say you're doing it wrong. You're asking for funding wrong. You're approaching us the wrong way. You're trying to raise money the wrong way. You're doing it wrong, and that's why we're complaining. And I think sometimes that is a valid criticism. Like you have to be, as somebody who's distributing something, you have to be able to listen to that. So there is that version of it where that's legitimately the community saying you're not asking for this in the right way. And then there is the entitlement factor where everything's supposed to be free. And it's hard to tell which one it is.
Well, to me, it's pretty simple. They're asking to be paid for a quality product that they produced. And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And if you think there's something wrong with that, you're cheap and wrong, because there's nothing wrong with that. And that's all I have to say.
There you go. That's how Kernel Linux feels about that. If you feel differently, at Kernel Linux, that's the Twitter handle, at Kernel Linux.
Let's go ahead. Let's have a conversation on Twitter. That really goes well for people. Go ahead, challenge me on it.
Or you can tweet me at ChrisLAS. You can hang out in our chat room, jblive.tv, on a Sunday. What are you? What's that face? What's that face? What's that face?
That's the what is on the screen. I can't really see because I have bad eyesight.
You were squinting. Yeah, I think it's. I'd love to have more of that. I'd love to have. I think you and I should chat about this. Mm-hmm. This might be a really good unplugged topic because you could get the virtual lug going in there. You're always busy on Tuesdays, but if you ever had a time to come in,
I make time.
That'd be good. I think that'd be a good topic. So I should mention Linux Unplugged. We were talking. There's a couple of things we mentioned earlier in the show that we were talking about that the chat room had no idea. A lot of times we'll make references or there's inside jokes that if you're listening to Linux Unplugged, you're going to get a lot more stuff. I mean, it's a great show that's growing on like crazy on its own. I don't really need to plug it here, but it's a totally different thing. It's a totally different experience. And let's be honest, there's just not enough Linux podcasts. There's some great ones out there now, but there's just not enough. So there's not. As somebody who makes a couple of them, I run out of Linux podcasts like by Tuesday, and I'm like, well, okay, so what? Now I just got to wait another week before what's up? And part of the problem is I make 2 of the big ones, so there's I don't really love listening to my own stuff. So Linux Unplugged came out sort of out of this whole I would like another show to listen to, and if I could listen to it, what would I like it to be? Something unscripted, unplugged, just a virtual lug that has a moderator that keeps things flowing, but we get into some great conversations. A lot of Ubuntu 16.04 follow-up has been done in there too.
And you have the voice of a lot of really prominent people in the community, not just 2 guys with an opinion, right? The movers and shakers, the people that are actually doing the stuff.
Oh, don't give them a big head. Don't give them a big head. Then they might stop showing up. I don't know. But it is a lot of fun. So we do that on Tuesdays. You can find out at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. That's where you can find all of the live times, including last, which is a heck of a show to come see live. LinuxActionShow.reddit.com is where you go to submit content, news stories, open source projects you want us to check out, and your feedback. Go there if you want to comment on me burping on mic, all that kind of stuff. LinuxActionShow.reddit.com. All right, Noah, is there anything else we need to plug? Any other things going on that any other shenanigans we need to talk about? I can't think of any.
I don't think so. I think we're good.
Feel good. I feel like we've been working on something big and secretive behind the scenes for like a month, and now we've just put it all out there in this episode. So feel good, Noah.
It's really been, honestly, it's been a little over a year. I mean, if you think about it, it's been in little stages here and there, or over the time. But really, the process, we let something run for 4 or 5 months to see if it's really going to work. Yeah. It's a year project, the culmination of.
I guess I'm just glad that it didn't have to slide backwards. It went in the right direction, I think, because there was always that possibility.
And actually, if you think about it, it's funny because, like, if you would have set out and outlined the things that we tried to accomplish back in April, beginning of April, and laid those out, what we have wound up with, not only have we hit those goals, we've hit, like, a bunch of milestones above and beyond, right?
Yeah. And also, I think if you would have started with the end goal in mind, we would have given up because it just wouldn't have worked. Having gone through that year-long process, we learned a lot. Like what we've brought to the audience was seriously a year's worth of really hard-learned lessons and combos that we had to come to. And there's a lot of bits that we can't answer all in one show. We could always do future shows if people are interested, but we figure we kind of have to keep it high level. But it's pretty nice, and it's really something that as we grow, we can now add on to this system in just such a cool, straightforward way. And a lot of that is made possible thanks to our patrons too. I'll give one more plug for patreon.com/today because I'll probably post this whole live stream, all of this stuff over there. So if you watch this episode and want to see more of it, you can go get a Patreon, get access to all that stuff, plus all the past stuff, including some tours you and I did in the studio talking about stuff while we were working on some of this. That's up there. All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning this week's episode of the Linux Action Show, and we'll see you right back here next week. I replaced our spotlight.
The burn is real, huh?
I replaced our spotlight.
Really?
Well, you had a filler in there. No, you had the filler in there.
I did?
Yeah, you said I'll come back and replace this later. Remember you had a little note in there that said that?
Oh, yeah. I meant that I was going to put the link back in there.
Oh.
But that's okay.
Wait, wasn't it like K3B or something?
Yeah, but it saved my butt this week thanks to Sig. Who's calling me?
Literally, how old is... That's
okay. That's all right.
No, I mean, it's solid because sometimes when you do those old weird ones, people love it. So
okay. It's fine. Here's
what I'm thinking. I'm literally thinking it was like an app pick like 7 or 8 years ago before we were keeping track of the app picks, I think is what's up. I think it's been an app pick. It was just probably like 8 years ago that it was an app pick.
Wait, you replaced the app pick or you replaced the spotlight?
Shit, we didn't have spotlights back in the day, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, anyway, here's the trade-off because you're gonna make fun of my K3B. I just won't tell you how K3B has literally saved me from dumping.
No, I want to know.
No, it's okay.
No,
it's all right.
Know.
I was close. I had threatened to move to Windows. That's how mad I. Why are people calling me?
No way.
And K3B saved it.
No
but
way.
Now you don't get to know.
No way. No way. No way. No way.
I wouldn't actually switch to Windows, but I was threatening it because I was really mad.
Wow. Okay, you got to tell me. You got to tell me what happened.
All right, I'll just tease it, and then here's what I'll do. We should tease it, and then next week we can.
Okay.
So 2 nights ago or 3 nights ago, I'm sitting in my house, and Sarah says we just finished our bedroom. So we're sitting in the bedroom for the first night, and Sarah goes, let's get a movie and let's cuddle up on the bed and watch a movie. I'm like, oh, that sounds like a great idea.
I bet.
So we go. So this starts at like 4 in the afternoon, right? I go to Redbox.
So you're planning this like way. This is more planning than you do for like a trip even.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't really planning. It just we were gonna watch a movie.
I'm just teasing you. I'm just teasing.
Yeah. So we get to the Redbox and we get the movie. Now I don't own a Blu-ray player. I don't have a Blu-ray player, DVD player, any of that stuff. I don't own one. All I have is my stupid, antiquated, nobody likes my little Western digital boxes. So
I know it's fine, dude. It's fine.
In order for me to watch a movie, there is literally no other option but for it to be ripped.
Digital. Yeah, it's pretty much I actually in same boat. In fact, I don't think I mentioned this on Unplugged a couple of weeks ago, and like everybody's like, oh yeah, same. I think this is getting more and more common. So in order to even watch it legally, you got to have it in digital form.
It doesn't legally doesn't matter. I have no optical player in my house. I don't even own one. So I sit down and thanks to 1604 being this wonderful latest distro with all the latest libraries and everything's going to work great. No kidding, dude. 7:30 rolls around and I'm still trying to figure out how to rip this movie. Not like I have tried to rip it and it fails. Like I can't even get started. It's so bad. And I'm talking to Rakai, and he's trying to help me fix this. And like finally 7, I'm like, screw it. Maybe I'll just go to Best Buy and buy a Windows box. At least I could rip my DVD and I could watch a movie, because apparently in 1604 I can't rip DVDs. And I got so mad, and eventually K3B saved me. But it's okay. We won't talk about it.
No, you said no. Okay, no. Now you'll have. Now here's the question though. So, because that's a good tease for next week. But so the question I have is there a point where if your Western Digital Live box wasn't so old school? So, for example, the NVIDIA Shield that I honestly think is the best set-top box ever created, the NVIDIA Shield TV. The one really nice thing about it too is like when I'm all like Hail Mary, I can't get any of my media playback solutions to work. It has Google Play and it has Epix on it, and I could just for $9 buy the movie. Would you have been willing, if like after all of that, would you like if you if you had the Google Play app on your Western Digital Live, would you have considered if they just had the movie on Google Play?
Maybe I would have definitely considered it. Honestly, probably before I did that, I would have just torrented it, just because I just get so sick of not.
The nice thing about the Play app is it just starts on your TV.
I'll tell you what. I'm going to show you. Let me see if I can find this real quick. I have one thing. It's the same kind of idea. The only problem I have with the NVIDIA Shield is my understanding is to use an IR remote, you have to have a little USB dongle, and you have to. Yeah. So, and that kind of kills it for me, because all of my remotes in my house they're all universal and they sync up.
So why not just get a little IR thing? Why not just get a little adapter?
Well, because you have to, the IR thing, you have to have, there's no way for me to, the remotes that I have are programmed at the computer, and there's no computer template for random USB IR guy I bought on Amazon. But let me show you this, and let me see what you think.
I mean, just as a quick aside, I think that is probably not a problem of 4 or 5 years from now, because the one thing you definitely...
they'll all be RF.
Well, I was going to say Wi-Fi, really. I think like all of the media centers, like all the software you can manage using Wi-Fi apps on your phone or
I mean, I could do that. I mean, I could do that, with my phone too. But the thing is, like when I get into bed, like my phone is plugged in and charging. I just want to grab
you'd want to use it. I'm just saying, that's the nice advantage is along with there are remotes that support Wi-Fi, you can also use your phone.
So I linked you. I said in Telegram I sent you a link, but this box, I'd be interested to see what you think of it. Actually, it's a quad core Android streaming box for like $98. Comes out of the box default installed with Kodi, and has gotten really good reviews. So I think that if I ever got to a point where I was going to replace my Western Digital box, I think this is probably what I would do it with. Simply because I know that Kodi will meet all of my requirements. I just haven't found a box that I can like buy Amazon Prime, take it out of the box, plug it in, and just have it start playing my media.
My main lesson learned in all of this stuff, to be honest with you, and this is why I think the Shield is such a good media set-top box, because obviously if I could have my way, it wouldn't be Android. But I have a few requirements. My requirements are that it supports mainstream streaming services. Like for me, it's a huge, because I'm a cord cutter, and I live in the freaking RV, it's a huge advantage that I can run the Sling TV app. And I can watch like CNN and Real TV. It's a huge advantage to have the Netflix app. And YouTube is where I now watch 90% of my TV is YouTube now. And I'm not even watching a TV series right now except for Silicon Valley via Plex. And so for me, what I'm trying to get to is it makes such a huge difference when these computers are irresponsibly overpowered, where they just have a ton of compute power, but at the same time, I want it to be silent and fanless and slim. And like that's the problem with building my own home theater PC is I never can quite get that. Right. And this NVIDIA Shield, it is way more horsepower than you need for Kodi playback. And that means the second, like before my finger is even fully off the play, like I've pressed the play button and like I'm not even lifted off completely the button, it's already playing the show that I want to watch. And for me, that kind of responsiveness on my TV, I like it. See, when I was a kid, I changed the channels and the TV just changed channels. Like it would pop, 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 pop. There was no like digital TV delay or like TV guide information that like thing comes up. It was pop, 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 pop. That's what I want when I hit play on my TV. I want immediate playback. And that's what I love about the Shield is the UI never lags, and you can have a Blu-ray like 16 gigabyte MKV file playing back, 22 gigabyte is my largest MKV file playing back. completely spotless, no flaws at all. Switching audio tracks, changing from 3D to 2D, just all the goodness. And same thing like jumping around in YouTube videos, jumping around in Netflix. And the other nice thing is, because it has that nice CPU and memory, is I swear it streams Netflix better than anything else does too, because it has a better buffer. And I'm doing this over a MiFi, so anything that has enough processing power and enough RAM to sort of smooth out a little bit of connection ups and downs. Man, that's a huge thing. So
see, and for me, I don't care about any sort of streaming service. What I want is when I pull it out of the box, I want to plug it in and I want to play media. I don't want to configure servers. I don't want to enter user information. I don't want to enter login stuff.
I just
want to plug it in and play stuff.
You need to reconsider that decision and using Plex, but you need to do it in a way that makes sense for you, so it actually works. That it's not you forcing in. Just for food for thought. Like your entire situation last night. If you had an Apple TV or an NVIDIA Shield or something that had any of the online movie services, you could have had that working in 30 seconds, and you would have had the movie playing.
The problem is it only solves the problem temporarily, right? Like, I would have gotten through the movie tonight, but it doesn't solve the movie problem.
You got so angry, you threatened to switch to Windows. You could have avoided all of that stress. With one
we all know that would never actually happen.
I'm just saying. I know, because then I'd have to call up Emma and get her to switch you back to Linux. That'd take forever. But I don't know, man. I think there's a couple of things. There's a couple of technology concepts that you're ahead of the curve on than most people. I think most technology concepts you're ahead of the curve than most people. But there's a couple, now that I've gotten to know you for a while, that is interesting to see that you have fallen in a rut of, well, this is the way I do it and it works for me. And
I have totally fallen into a rut.
Sync services are definitely that for you, because they could be a huge. They could fundamentally, if once you understand the concept of a transparent file system that follows you wherever you go, and how unbelievably empowering that is for like reloading your machines and having data available to you, and know like the same file paths on every single computer. You open up your video editor and all of the assets and all of the resources are always available in the same spot. It's gorgeous, but you don't do it. You don't try it because you got your. And I'm telling you, I'm not saying replace local playback, because if anything, after having now moved into the RV, I am doubled down on local playback. I'm all about local playback. I'm loving local playback. I'm not saying abandon local playback, but I'm saying local playback augmented with online streaming services gives you that flexibility that when your local setup doesn't work, I'll just go to Google Play today. And
I told Rikai, because he said the same thing. You're both absolutely right. I've totally fallen into a rut, and I'm clinging to a bygone era of early 2000s. But I told him, I said, this is my last stand. This is my last stand against internet services, against things that I have to activate, against things that I have to create accounts for, against things that I have to rely on some other. This is my last stand. The only thing in my life that I want to be local, that I just refuse to budge on, is my media stuff. I'm
not saying not have local. I'm saying absolutely have a local. I'm saying augment.
And actually, to be completely honest, like, if you think about it, I've never, ever had an issue playing any of the stuff I already have. The problem is, it's getting increasingly more difficult to add to my media library.
Hold on. So that's where the online streaming services come in, is they replace that totally weird one-off, I'm going to go get a disc. You just stop doing that. And now that totally weird one-off, I'm going to buy it from online. Hey, you know what we want to do tonight? We want to be super lazy and we don't already have this movie. Let's just click the button. Because you spend about as much as you would to go to Redbox anyways, especially when you include gas.
That's true.
And your time.
But so we rented Ant-Man. That was the movie, right? And you know what the very first words out of my son's mouth this morning were?
I want to watch Ant-Man again.
Hey, Dad, you know that movie we watched last night? Could you put that on my laptop? Because I want to watch it too. Now, if I had done the one-off streaming thing, now I still have the problem of
you can't buy it. You can buy it, but then you have to pay full price. But for
that's my point. Even if DVD is a DVD, right? If I'd let's say instead of Redbox, let's say I went to Best Buy and bought a DVD of Ant-Man, I would have been in the same situation. Like, I still have no way of getting it is fundamentally getting more difficult to get legal media from the antiquated optical way that they want you to watch it to a modern way that I'm going to do it one way or the other. So, and really what this means is people like you and me, eventually we're just going to get to a point where we're going to say, you know what? It's not that I'm unwilling to pay $20, $30, $40 for an optical disc. There's just nothing I can do with it. So it's a waste of my time and effort. And I guess I'll just torrent it. You know what we've been doing? Just YouTubing. There's a lot of good but people it gets pulled down though. If it's no. I'm not saying no. I'm saying totally original YouTube content.
it's like the whole like tip of the iceberg analogy is so overused, but like you think you have an idea of what's on YouTube. It is unbelievable once you get below the surface how many people are up there that are creating all these different crazy kinds of things. Like Eric Nomadic the Fanatic and Gone with the Wind is the tip of the iceberg. Tip of the iceberg. It is huge. And so sometimes you just sit back, you watch some of that it's fascinating.